January 7th, 1904, Manhattan. Madame Louise, only 42, gone, just like that. Her heart, weak from months of sickness, finally gave out on us. A wire went straight north, 300 miles up the Hudson, tracing the St. Lawrence River, all the way to our private island in the Thousand Islands. Hart Island. 300 of our men were raising America's biggest private castle there. The telegram had one brutal order: stop all work. Within hours, I watched stonemasons drop their chisels. Carpenters left their planes. Beautiful mosaics, abandoned forever. 300 men walked away from 4 years of backbreaking labor. The master's grand monument to true love, doomed to remain an empty shell. 6 stories high, 120 rooms, 43,000 square feet of neighboring rose granite. The master modeled it after those grand Rhineland castles back in Prussia. $2.5 million spent. That is over $80 million today. A Valentine's Day gift from my master, a former dishwasher, to the queen who helped build his massive empire. From Mr. Boldt to his beloved Louise. He never set foot on that island again. Before I tell you their secrets, please like and subscribe. Your support lets an old servant like me keep sharing these hidden histories. Drop a comment if you notice something. I love reading your thoughts. Let's rewind to the real beginning. Not a glittering island, but the grimy kitchens of New York City, where a 13-year-old immigrant kid started scrubbing plates. From peasant to king. 1864, New York Harbor. A skinny 13-year-old boy steps off a ship straight from Prussia, his pockets completely empty. George Boldt, born April 25, 1851, on Rügen Island in the Baltic Sea. A paradise of towering castles and resorts where rich Berliners played. The boy grew up observing high society. He saw how flawless service created true luxury. But now, he was totally alone in America. No family, zero money, not a word of English. He took a dockside hotel job, busboy, the absolute bottom. Clearing tables, scrubbing greasy pots, hauling trash. They paid him pennies. He slept in a damp basement. But my master watched closely. He learned a secret most lowly busboys never grasp. The hotel game wasn't just buildings or fancy food. It was about making guests feel like royalty. By his early 20s, Boldt clawed his way into kitchen management. Brutal hours, terrible pay. He actually fled New York once, chasing a Texas dream, but it completely fell apart. He crawled back to New York, broke as ever, back to the kitchens. But then, at age 25, the master got an offer that flipped the board. William Kerr, head steward at the Philadelphia Club, needed a sharp dining room manager. And let me tell you, this wasn't just any ordinary gentleman's club. It was America's oldest, most exclusive sanctuary. Founded in 1734, its members were top-tier elite, absolute old money families ruling since the colonial days. Mr. Boldt grabbed the job. He relocated to Philadelphia in 1876. Working those tables, he saw how real power moved. Not flashy new money, but that quiet, untouchable, confident exclusivity. The elite demanded invisible perfection. We servants had to anticipate their needs silently. Absolute discretion. Boldt mastered it. But crucially, he met someone special there. Madame Louise Augusta Kerr, the steward's daughter, born 1860, right in Philadelphia. She was raised in our world, watching her father run the elite club. She knew flawless service and presentation natively. She was just 15. He was 26. They courted perfectly by the book, earning her strict father's blessing. The wedding was June 14, 1877, 17 and 26. But what really made this match incredible? It was 100% equal partnership. Madame Louise brought no massive dowry. Her father was just a working steward, not a member. And my master? Brilliant, sure, but still just a hired hand. They decided to build their empire side by side. After 4 years, they saved enough to gamble. 1881. The master bought the Bellevue Hotel on Broad and Walnut Streets. Tiny place, honestly more dining room than hotel, but it was all theirs. Madame Louise completely transformed it. She brought in ideas that seem basic now, but back then, revolutionary. Fresh flowers everywhere, soft candlelight, tables spaced perfectly so nobody overheard your secrets. She made dinner a spectacular event, not just food. Her vision changed everything. Rich women were bored sitting in their mansions. They craved gorgeous public spaces to gossip and shine. The Bellevue quickly became their absolute favorite sanctuary. Word spread like wildfire. The food? Legendary. The master paid top dollar for master chefs. But Madame Louise's elegant charm made the place totally unforgettable. Soon, the entire Philadelphia elite practically lived at the Bellevue. We even shipped our signature Philadelphia terrapins straight over to Queen Victoria herself in England. Soon enough, the master bought out the rival Stratford Hotel right across the street. Boom! Now he owned both corners. Rivals crushed. Total market control. By the late 1880s, my employers were hospitality legends. Even snobby New York elites demanded tables at our Bellevue. I served the Astors, I poured wine for the Vanderbilts, and those VIPs mattered. Especially one regular, Abner Bartlett, the right-hand man to William Waldorf-Astor. Bartlett was blown away by Boldt's skill and Louise's class. He whispered our names to Astor. William Waldorf-Astor wanted to build a New York mega hotel that would absolutely crush anything America had ever witnessed. Astor needed a genius who breathed luxury, a man who could run an empire and magnetize the ultra-rich without even breaking a sweat. 1891. Astor gave my master the golden ticket. Come run the new Waldorf Hotel in New York. But there was one massive, messy catch. Astor's cousin, John Jacob Astor IV, absolutely despised him. Their family feud was legendary. Now, these billionaires were building rival hotels right next door on Fifth Avenue. The blood feud started over pure spite. Caroline Astor, the Mrs. Astor, lived at 350 Fifth Avenue. Her grand ball literally dictated who mattered in society. Her nephew, William Waldorf, hated her snobby gatekeeping, so in 1890 he plotted revenge. He'd build a loud commercial hotel right against her peaceful mansion. He hired architect Henry Hardenberg to design it. Flashy German Renaissance style, massive, elaborate facade. That's when they approached my master, George Boldt, offering him the proprietor role. He saw the brilliant opportunity, but also the dangerous risk. The location? Strictly residential. Survival meant luring in high society elites who actually despised our new hotel's very existence. Mr. Boldt needed $100,000 just for the furniture. He jumped in anyway. We trusted Madame Louise's brilliant design skills to make the Waldorf so elegant that nobody cared about the location. We opened the Waldorf on March 13, 1893, right as a brutal economic depression crushed America. Absolutely terrible timing. The sheer stress gave the master a nervous breakdown, but his grand strategy actually worked. We offered pure exclusivity to anyone wealthy enough. Listen, you and I know how the rich operate. During panics, they spend wildly to prove they are untouchable. Within months, we turned a massive profit. Then, the Astor heir made his play. He owned the land right next to our Waldorf. He hired our exact architect and announced the Astoria Hotel, 17 stories tall and even more insanely elaborate. Slated for 1897, my master cleverly stepped in as the ultimate peacemaker. He actually talked the Astor heir into letting us manage the Astoria too. Then, he convinced both feuding cousins that combining our empires would make everyone infinitely richer. Miraculously, they agreed. When the Astoria opened in 1897, Mr. Boldt merged everything. He connected the buildings into one massive beast, the legendary Waldorf-Astoria Hotel. 1,600 magnificent rooms, the absolute largest hotel on Earth, and America's most elite address. But this triumph wasn't just my master's doing. Madame Louise's brilliant touch was quite literally everywhere. I watched her fill the halls with soft lighting and daily fresh flowers. She even placed a pincushion on every single lady's dresser, tiny details proving we truly valued our female guests. Madame pushed for utterly revolutionary changes. She decreed that gentlemen could actually smoke right in front of the ladies in specific lounges. She completely destroyed the old separate entrances for women. Now, ladies walked right through our main doors, demanding the exact same respect as any man. We launched wild innovations that changed everything. Room service, for instance. I personally delivered gourmet meals directly to the guests' private suites. Our famous head waiter Oscar invented iconic dishes like the Waldorf salad. We even made that sweet Thousand Island dressing an absolute national obsession. We were no longer just a hotel. We were the absolute center of power. Tycoons cut deals, presidents slept here, and high society elites gathered in our halls just to show off. The papers later claimed that my master, above absolutely anyone else, single-handedly invented the modern luxury hotel, and they were completely right. He turned simple sleeping quarters into actual palaces where history happened. And because of it, the Boldt family became unimaginably, insanely wealthy. Mr. Boldt pulled the highest salary of any American worker back then. Plus, owning the lease meant we were raking in absolute mountains of pure profit daily. He was worth maybe $25 million, easily hundreds of millions in today's money. We kept private apartments right inside the Waldorf, living in the very paradise they built. Their children attended elite academies. Young Master George Jr. was eventually sent off to Cornell University. Little Miss Clover went to Manhattan's prestigious Spence School. By the late 1890s, my masters had conquered the ultimate American dream. Not bad for a guy who arrived as a penniless 13-year-old busboy. They forged an unstoppable empire through brilliant teamwork, sheer skill, and absolute perfectionism. They had two perfect heirs, George Jr. in 1879 and young Clover in 1883. I watched them enjoy absolutely everything. Unlimited wealth, deep prestige, total victory. Yet the master kept remembering his old Prussian childhood. Those giant river castles, the secret summer hideaways where royals escaped the boiling city heat. Those quiet islands where everything just slowed down. The family desperately needed that. A sanctuary far from the Waldorf's crushing stress. Somewhere completely private where they could finally just breathe. Stick with me. This is where our real story begins. In 1895, I packed their bags for a northern vacation to the Thousand Islands. They were about to discover absolute paradise. That summer of 1895, the master and madam boarded a train heading north out of New York City. Our target? The Thousand Islands region on the St. Lawrence River, right up against the Canadian border. This was actually our very first trip there. We'd overheard Waldorf guests bragging about it constantly. It was the ultimate playground for the Gilded Age elite. A hidden kingdom where millionaires constructed insanely massive summer mansions on totally private islands. That majestic St. Lawrence River connected Lake Ontario right to the Atlantic, holding over 1,800 scattered islands across a 60-mile stretch. Some islands could hold sprawling estates. Others were tiny, barely holding a single tree. Together, it was visually stunning. Crystal blue waters, lush green timber, and jagged rocks. Filthy rich families from Boston to New York had been secretly building epic summer homes there since the 1870s. Newport was way too stiff and competitive, but here, we found pure privacy and breathtaking natural beauty. Every family claimed their own island. No exhausting social games for the master, just peaceful waters, easy boating, and endless summer quiet. The family was instantly spellbound. We booked a suite at one of the local Grand Hotels. There were plenty of massive resorts built strictly to pamper those wealthy summer elites. But my master ran hotels. He certainly didn't want to vacation in one. He craved total control. His own island, a massive summer fortress, and open space for the children. I accompanied them to scout properties. Most islands were already claimed by old money, but a few rare estates popped up. We inspected several. Nothing clicked. Everything was either awkwardly huge or terribly placed. Then, a whisper about Hart Island. 5 perfect acres sitting right near Alexandria Bay, the beating heart of the region's social scene. It already had a charming little cottage sitting there, built by the late Congressman Hart himself. The legal paperwork was a messy nightmare. Hart died back in 1893, and his estate had just flipped the land to a Mr. Dewey for $10,000 that very July. Watch this brilliant move. Just 11 days later, Madame Louise snatched the island from Dewey. The official paperwork? Recorded at exactly $1 single. Was it a secret favor, a quiet handshake, or just some clever legal loophole? Honestly, even I never learned the true story behind that mysterious deal. Anyway, Mr. Boldt finally owned his first island. But he made an immediate change. It was originally called Hart Island, named for the previous owner. The master changed the spelling to Hart Island. Very deliberate. He wanted a place of love and family. Not just another summer estate we had to manage, but a home. But he went even further. The shoreline wasn't naturally heart-shaped. Mr. Boldt had us physically reshape the land, moving earth, dragging stones, altering every edge until it looked exactly like a Valentine heart from above. An absolutely massive job. The master always loved his grand gestures. We spent the next few summers serving them at Hart Island, constantly expanding that modest little original cottage. Every season, they loved the Thousand Islands even more. It was the exact opposite of the New York and Philadelphia hotel rush. Quiet, wild, peaceful. Soon, Mr. Boldt started buying up everything. By the late 1890s, he owned around 3,000 acres, mostly right next door on Wellesley Island. We transformed Wellesley Island completely, built a massive airfield, an 18-hole golf course, even a polo field. Stables, tennis courts, and grand cottages for his wealthy friends and business partners. It basically became a private resort for us to run. We kept a working farm there too. Mr. Boldt loved playing the gentleman farmer, overseeing our work, hosting elite guests, playing polo. Miles away from the crazy intensity of the Waldorf-Astoria. But Hart Island? That remained special, smaller, more intimate, just for the family. The children absolutely loved it. Young George and Clover spent their whole summer there, boating, swimming, and exploring all the nearby islands. Madame Louise cherished it the most. For 20 years, she worked alongside her husband, constantly building luxury hotels for total strangers. The Bellevue, the Waldorf, always making sure guests were perfectly served. But Hart Island was finally theirs alone, private and incredibly personal. By 1899, the old cottage felt entirely too cramped. The family needed more space. Naturally, the master began planning a huge expansion. Not just throwing a few extra rooms onto the cottage, he wanted something grand, something perfect for huge family gatherings and hosting their wealthy friends. Madame Louise had her own brilliant ideas. She had professionally designed countless elegant hotel rooms and grand public spaces. What if she built without any commercial limits? What if she finally designed her ultimate dream home? Mr. Boldt listened closely. Then he came up with a gesture matching his wildly romantic streak. He was going to build her a castle. An actual castle. Modeled right after those Rhineland fortresses he remembered from his childhood in Prussia. Massive, incredibly elaborate. Nothing else like it existed here. His plan? Give it to her on Valentine's Day 1905. Sure, their anniversary was in June, but Valentine's Day just fit a giant monument built purely for love. Word was, Madame already knew. We constantly saw her deeply involved in those early design discussions. But the master wanted the final reveal to be a complete surprise. The sheer scale, the absolute magnificence, fulfilling every single dream she had. He was 48, she was 39. They spent over 20 years building their empire together. Now, watch what he built just for her. In late 1899, Mr. Boldt hires the Hewitt brothers from Philadelphia. Those are the exact same legendary architects who later designed his massive Bellevue Stratford Hotel. He gave them one single instruction: build the grandest private castle in America. They immediately started drawing. The master and madam reviewed everything, making careful adjustments. She practically controlled the room layouts and interior details. A true partnership, just like how they ran their hotels. By early 1900, the final blueprints were sitting on his desk. 6 stories high, 120 rooms, full Rhineland-style with towering turrets. We'd carve it from rose-colored granite from Oak Island, which the master also happened to own. Estimated cost? $2.5 million. That is about $80 million today. Way more than most Gilded Age mansions. But for him, money was never an issue. The Waldorf profits easily covered it. He looked at us and set the deadline: Valentine's Day, 1905. 5 years. Very ambitious, but totally possible with enough manpower. In the spring of 1900, Mr. Boldt finally gave us the order: start digging. He hired 300 of us, spared absolutely no expense. Our quiet summer retreat turned into the wildest, most ambitious private construction site in all of American history. The ultimate promise. Winter, 1899. Mr. Boldt meets the architects in Philadelphia to finalize the island's grand design. Not just one castle, but an entire sprawling estate built to run on its own. The master knew exactly what he wanted: those grand Rhineland castles along Germany's Rhine River. He grew up as a boy on the Prussian island of Rügen. Wealthy folks vacationed there, massive castles everywhere. They had heavy defensive walls mixed with pure Renaissance elegance. Tall stone towers, but with stunning, beautiful, artistic windows. That perfect mix of brutal strength and beauty. This castle was proof. Our employers weren't struggling immigrants anymore. The Boldt family had absolutely conquered this country. A genuine European castle. The ultimate royal symbol, built deep in the wilderness by a man who started washing dishes. The architects drafted the master's vision perfectly. The main building, pure Italianate Renaissance style, packed with heavy German Romanesque details. 6 insane stories high if you count the towers. 120 rooms covering 43,000 square feet. Imagine how many staff we'd need for that. 4 smaller 40-foot towers surrounding 2 60-foot giants. And the main tower, reaching 75 feet into the sky, anchoring the entire beautiful estate. 170 feet long by 160 wide. Huge, yes, but practically laid out. A massive home for the family to actually live in, not just a museum. Rooms designed for endless guests and real living, not empty display spaces. Stick with me. The main castle was just a fraction of the master's crazy plan. The master envisioned an entire island compound with specific strategic buildings. First up, the yacht house. Mr. Boldt commanded an absolute armada. Over 60 vessels under our care, from small rowboats to a massive houseboat called La Duchesse. We needed a colossal structure for this fleet, capable of holding ships over 100 feet long. The master strategically placed it on Wellesley Island for easy estate access. Second phase, a powerhouse. Our secluded island was completely cut off from mainland power. To light the estate, the master ordered a massive steam generator brought on site. Positioned on the eastern edge, we built it to resemble a medieval defense tower, tactical camouflage matching pure elegance. Third, the Ulster Tower. We called it a playhouse, but really, it was an entertainment fortress for guests. Modeled perfectly after 16th century German defense towers, absolutely striking. Inside, pure luxury for the masters. A bowling alley, library, kitchens, and a gorgeous ballroom for dancing. 90 feet tall. A towering achievement anywhere else, but here, just a single piece. Fourth, the arch. The island's main gateway would be an elaborate stone archway right at the water, complete with a tactical drawbridge we could actually raise. Let me tell you, when arriving guests sailed through that gateway, they immediately knew this was extraordinary. Beyond the fortresses, Madame Louise planned incredibly extensive landscaping. Italian gardens, swan ponds, imported European marble. We were ordered to maintain every single walking path, tree, and flower to achieve absolutely flawless visual perfection. The budget? $2.5 million. Adding the art and grounds, we were looking at $3 million, roughly $100 million in today's money. But the master could afford it. His hotel empire generated fortunes. Simultaneously, he was orchestrating another massive operation, an $8 million hotel rebuild down in Philadelphia. Absolutely wild. He funded both easily from his income, but this island was entirely different. That was business. This was personal. A grand monument proving how much Madame Louise meant to him. The absolute deadline. Valentine's Day, 1905. The Masters had married in June 1877, but Valentine's Day carried the ultimate romantic weight. The master planned to officially unveil the castle then, but did Madame Louise truly not know about the operation? From what I saw, highly questionable. I saw her at the design briefings. She commanded the room layouts and decorative details. The compound wasn't a secret, but the insane scale of the master's commitment? That grandeur was going to be the revelation. We only deployed workers during warm months. The freezing river in winter completely cut off our material supply lines and transport. Our active construction window ran strictly April through October. 5 seasons to finish it. A brutal schedule. The master hired an absolute army. 300 workers, masons, craftsmen, and laborers. We lived out on the island, grinding 6 days a week, dawn to dusk. Phase 1. Clear the grounds. We had to relocate the master's original cottage. That winter of 1899, we disassembled the entire 30-room structure and hauled it directly across the frozen river to Wellesley Island. Absolutely insane. We rebuilt it there as the Grand Country Clubhouse. Years later, you'd probably recognize it as the Hart House Inn. Site cleared. Operation Go. Spring 1900 hit. We set up island camps while the heavy materials arrived. Steel, lumber, heavy equipment. The mobilization scale was staggering. Our quiet retreat instantly transformed into an industrial war zone. The master bought Oak Island purely to mine granite. That rose-gray stone was perfect armor for the castle walls. Strong, local, visually striking. Our quarry teams cut massive blocks and barged them over. Finally, foundation work began. Building on an island requires intense tactical planning. We had absolutely no easy supply lines. Forget a tool? Too bad. Every single item came by boat. Thankfully, the master was a logistical genius. Running his hotels meant managing thousands of moving parts daily. He unleashed that exact commanding organization onto our island. We never lacked supplies. Operations moved flawlessly. By summer 1900, our first massive outbuildings were rising. That yacht house over on Wellesley Island shot up fast. A 50-foot-high steel-frame behemoth, over 160 feet long, 3 massive boat bays. Meanwhile, we anchored the powerhouse foundation on the island's eastern edge. The Ulster Tower climbed the southern shore. The stone arch took shape. The masters strictly monitored our progress from their temporary Wellesley Island base. Every summer they arrived. I watched Madame Louise inspect our skeletal structures, perfectly envisioning the final rooms. The master held tactical meetings with our supervisors. The Boldt children were already teenagers by this point. They'd explore the war zone when we were off duty, climbing our scaffolding to imagine their family's finished empire. By late 1900, Season 1 was done. The progress was undeniable. Our yacht house was nearly finished. The powerhouse and tower were rising fast. The arch stood like a monument, and right in the center, we finally began laying the true prize, the main castle's foundation. I watched massive stone blocks slide perfectly into place. Steel frames pierced the sky. Master George's grand vision was finally taking physical form. 4 grueling construction seasons left. 4 more summers of 300 men reshaping Hart Island under our watchful eyes. Just 4 years until Valentine's Day 1905, when Master George would hand Lady Louise the keys to her finished castle. Everything moved exactly to his master plan. The budget held firm. Deadlines were met. The sheer quality, completely blowing our expectations away. In just 4 years, this island would become the absolute crown jewel of the Thousand Islands. Our master and lady would have their ultimate sanctuary. This towering monument to their love would stand for absolute generations. 4 years. Just 4 more years, and this entire land would be reborn. By the summer of 1900, Hart Island felt like a literal industrial city. 300 men crammed into temporary barracks right through the season. We pushed them 6 days a week, dawn until absolute dusk. Resting only Sundays, from April's spring thaw straight through to October's bitter freezing winds. We squeezed every drop of daylight before winter could kill the project. The logistics? An absolute nightmare. Every single tool, stone, and board traveled by boat. The master built a genius supply chain. Heavy barges running non-stop from the mainland and from Oak Island, hauling endless tons of raw granite. Master George bought a whole fleet just to keep us supplied. And the very first things we finished were the massive support buildings. The main fortress would take years, but we finished the side buildings fast, giving us staging grounds and proving the master's vision was real. The yacht house on Wellesley Island stood mostly complete by fall 1900. It was an absolute beast. The numbers? Mind-blowing. Over 50 feet high, 160 feet long, and 115 feet wide. True architectural dominance. A pure steel truss skeleton held it up. Total cutting-edge engineering for our time. It featured 3 colossal bays, custom-built to shelter Master George's massive fleet of 70 ships. Step inside, and it matched the absolute finest Manhattan luxury. The polished wooden interior was crafted beautifully, a true flex of wealth. It gave us heavy storage, plus huge bays for repairs and maintenance. Listen, this was never just some simple garage. It was an elite facility where his majestic ships received royal treatment. We'd later build a 4th bay just for La Duchesse, his colossal 104-foot houseboat. The total bill? A staggering $50,000 just for construction. For you and me today, that's roughly $1.5 million just to park boats. It proved money meant absolutely nothing to the master. Back on Hart Island, our grand powerhouse claimed the eastern edge. Disguised perfectly as a round stone medieval defense tower, but hiding pure modern machinery inside. Inside sat a massive steam-powered generator, pumping electricity across the whole territory. We wired lights through the entire castle grounds. Cutting-edge power wrapped in ancient stone. Rumors put the powerhouse cost at $40,000, but again to the master, expense meant zero. Functionality and absolute beauty were his only rules. Down at the water, the peristyle arch took terrifyingly grand shape. This massive gate served as the main entrance for elite guests sailing onto the island. 2 heavy stone columns held up a giant arch, leaving a gap for a real drawbridge. We could physically raise it, letting ships slide right through into the master's private inner harbor. The arch? Pure dramatic flair, completely unnecessary since ships could dock anywhere. But for the master's grand aesthetic, it was absolutely crucial. Wealthy guests would sail through that mighty gate and instantly realize they were entering something mythical, a heavily fortified estate, his own private, untouchable kingdom. That single arch cost $25,000. Think about that. $750,000 in today's money, spent entirely on a fancy front door. But the absolute craziest early build was Astoria Tower, standing proudly on the southern shore. 90 feet of stone, perfectly replicating a 16th-century German defense tower from the old Alster River in Hamburg. We literally built it weird, on purpose. Slanted walls, wonky ceilings, and jagged roof lines. The master wanted it to feel like an authentic, battle-scarred fortress outside. But the inside? Pure luxury. The basement alone hid a fully functioning 2-lane bowling alley. Absolute top-tier engineering, carved straight into solid bedrock. We built perfectly smooth lanes equipped with heavy, flawless pin-setting machinery. Our lords and guests threw strikes in a stone tower built for war, and right above that basement bunker, a gorgeous billiards room, locked and loaded with professional tables and top-tier gaming gear. We also built a massive library packed with custom shelves, and climbing even higher, fully furnished luxury bedrooms waiting for the master's elite guests. At the very peak sat a kitchen and the infamous shell room, a sweeping circular dance hall covered entirely in beautiful seashells and wild nautical designs. We successfully finished the massive tower and opened its heavy doors by summer 1899. Honestly, before the main castle even broke ground, Master George threw a massive party for New York bankers, just flexing his power, proving the fortress was real. Now, you might hear the master's family camped in Astoria Tower during construction, though between us servants, some say they actually rested over in a plush Wellesley Island house. Either way, the tower was gorgeous and proved what the final estate would look like. Construction ran $15,000, easily $450,000 in today's cash. Once again, an utterly insane pile of money burned on a simple guest house and party room. By the fall of 1900, one single brutal season of our labor had turned a sleepy cottage island into an insanely complex industrial fortress. The yacht house stood ready. The powerhouse roared to life. Astoria Tower was already hosting elite banquets, and that dramatic Paris-style arch glared proudly across the freezing water. And right in the dead center, the Grand Castle's foundation finally hit the dirt. We locked those massive stone blocks into breathtakingly precise battle formations. Heavy steel frames pierced the sky. The sheer footprint was visible now, 170 by 160 feet. We all felt the terror. This was going to be the absolute biggest monster we ever built. Master George ran this operation with cold precision. Foundation first, dug deep, heavily reinforced to safely carry the insane weight of 6 giant stories of steel. Next up came the massive steel skeleton locking it together. Then the granite armor, every single block perfectly sliced at Oak Island and dragged over here to assemble. This wasn't cheap rock. It was a stunning rose-gray granite pulled straight from regional soil. Catch the morning sunlight just right, and the entire fortress glowed warm pink. Pure beauty. But better yet, it was indestructible, practically begging those harsh, freezing winter storms to try and tear our master's work down. Let me tell you, the stonemasons worked with insane precision. Every single block fit perfectly. No gaps, no weakness. If built right, this place would last centuries. Mr. Boldt demanded absolute perfection from us, and he paid top dollar. The architects designed our master's castle with multiple towers at different heights. It created a breathtaking, dramatic roofline. 4 smaller towers at 40 feet, 2 larger ones at 60. The main tower stood 75 feet. From the water, I watched the castle rise in massive stages, pulling eyes straight up. Everywhere you looked, hearts appeared, carved right into stone, forged into metal, even hidden in the tiles. Nothing tacky, just quiet, beautiful reminders to all of us that this was a pure monument to love. Mr. Boldt hid his symbolism in every corner. When the winter of 1900 hit and we paused construction, that first year's massive progress really showed. The outbuildings were basically done. Main foundation laid, steel framework rising high. We stockpiled materials for spring. The crew went back to the mainland. Meanwhile, I traveled with Mr. Boldt and Madame Louise back to the Waldorf-Astoria for the harsh winter. But they never stopped planning. I saw them constantly studying sketches, room layouts, fine interior finishes, every decorative choice. It consumed their private hours, dreaming of their island castle. Then, the spring of 1901 finally arrived. Ice melted away. Our cruise returned. Season 2 began. I watched those castle walls rise high that summer. First floor, then the second. The granite exterior climbed steadily upward. Windows were framed. The massive roof structure started. By fall, the master's vision took real shape. Not just a skeletal frame anymore, but a true fortress. Finishing work continued on the outbuildings too. The powerhouse finally got its heavy generator and electrical systems. We finished the yacht house interior, setting up storage and maintenance zones. Then our groundskeepers got to work. The crews prepared soil, mapped gardens, and planted countless trees. Madame Louise spent a lot of time with us on the island that 1901 season. I would see her guiding craftsmen on interior details. She walked the framed rooms, perfectly imagining how each space would be beautifully furnished. She managed the designers building her Italian gardens, but secretly, her fading health was becoming a real worry for us. Nothing dramatic at first, just deep fatigue, heavy breathing on the stairs. She was only 41 in 1901, but running the Waldorf-Astoria and building Hart Island, it was draining her life away. Mr. Boldt noticed, sure, but he didn't panic. Madame was always so strong. They had worked side by side for 25 years. She never let pain stop her duties. He figured she would finally rest once the castle was done. Those sweet Thousand Island summers would surely heal her. Anyway, our second construction season ended with massive progress. The lower exterior was practically finished. Huge roof structure in place, doors hung, windows set. The interior work was finally ready to start. Plaster, fine flooring, grand staircases. When the winter of 1901 hit, I traveled with the Boldts back to Manhattan again. Madame Louise looked so fragile now. The Waldorf's endless demands, massive events, managing U.S. staff, protecting their gold standard, it exhausted her. Now, listen close, because this is where everything shifts. Mr. Boldt begged her to rest. Let the staff handle things, but she stubbornly refused. She built that hotel's legacy with him. Fatigue wouldn't make her step back. But behind closed doors, we knew she was seeing doctors. The grim diagnosis dropped in 1902. Tuberculosis. Or maybe a failing heart. The private medical records were always kept strictly hidden. One thing was certain. Our mistress was dying faster than anyone admitted. Tuberculosis was everywhere in the Gilded Age. And worse, no real cure existed. The rich were told to rest, eat rich food, find fresh air. The Thousand Islands, with its crystal air and deep peace, was supposed to save her life. Or maybe her heart was just giving out. Rheumatic disease, they whispered. Either way, the brilliant doctors had almost nothing to offer. Rest in bed, avoid moving, pray it stops worsening. We placed Madame under constant medical care. A private doctor traveled with us everywhere, but she refused to abandon Hart Island. That grand castle was her absolute dream too. She swore she would see it finished. Spring 1902, Season 3 kicked off. Ignoring her doctors, she came north, wandering the newly enclosed dark interior rooms. I watched her review the finishes, selecting fine tiles, approving wallpapers, picking grand chandeliers. But those stairs, she just couldn't climb them anymore. Our men built wooden ramps just so she could reach the upper floors. She sat constantly, completely exhausted. Mr. Boldt watched her, panic finally setting in. Yet the build was perfectly on schedule. 2 more years, 1903, 1904, ending with a massive Valentine's Day 1905 reveal. The fortress would be finished. Our mistress would surely heal in the quiet paradise they built. That was the desperate plan, the pure hope, the sacred promise he made her on day one. $2.5 million, 4 brutal years, 300 workers sweating through 4 seasons, turning bare rock into a royal estate. Every single stone, every penny, just for her. The castle was truly rising. The ultimate dream was physically breathing. Just 2 short years left. Let's look back together. Spring of 1900. The main construction finally began. We finished the heavy foundation work between late 1899 and early 1900, sinking massive stone blocks deep into our island's solid bedrock. A huge steel frame built to hold 6 stories of pure granite and heavy roofs. Nobody engineered private homes like this. It was absolute madness. Our design was insanely complex. Not some boring rectangular box with cheap decorations. This was a true, genuine royal fortress. Sections at different heights, towers of all sizes, jagged roof lines creating the most dramatic silhouette imaginable. The architects, those Hewitt gentlemen, drew up plans for a real Rhineland castle. But for us staff, completely modern. Let me tell you about the main floor. A massive entrance hall, a sweeping staircase, fancy reception rooms, and a dining room. Perfect for the master's grand parties and family gatherings. 15-foot ceilings made the main floor feel majestic, not cold. Up on the second floor, that was strictly private space for the family, just bedrooms and quiet sitting areas. Mr. George and Madame Louise claimed the Grand Master Suite. Young George and Miss Clover had their own rooms for visits, plus plenty of gorgeous guest suites for their closest friends. We even had multiple bathrooms with running indoor plumbing, a wild luxury back then. And way up top, that is where we staff lived, right alongside the extra guest rooms. Those soaring towers, they held the special rooms, observation decks with insane views, quiet little studies, and extra storage. Every single floor had a strict purpose. Even our domain, the basement, was an absolute masterpiece. We had massive kitchens built to feed hundreds. Endless storage for food and wine, our main workstations, the heating mechanics, an actual swimming pool, and the real secret, the tunnels. A maze of underground passages connected the whole estate. It let us workers slip around completely unseen. Pure genius, really. One tunnel stretched all the way to the powerhouse on the east side. We could haul heavy coal and run the roaring generators without ever disturbing the master's fancy guests up above. Perfect invisible service. Another passage linked the outbuildings. The whole massive estate ran on our hidden sweat. Walk with me here. As those walls went up in 1901, the sheer size was terrifying. Old pictures prove it just completely swallowed Hart Island. Guests pulling up on boats would just stare at those towers, piercing the trees. The rose-gray granite literally glowed at sunset, unfinished, and it still stole your breath. The work was brutally precise. Every single granite block was custom cut over at the Oak Island Quarry. The quarry boys marked every stone for a specific spot. Then, barges floated them over to us on Hart Island, where the masons locked them in. One tiny chip? Throw it out, cut a new one. Mr. George hated delays. It was an absolute factory out there, with 300 men sweating away at once. Quarry workers busting rock, barge captains hauling it, masons stacking the heavy granite, and our carpenters framing up the grand rooms inside. Roofers sliding on slate tiles, ironworkers shaping metal, plus plumbers and electricians wiring the modern magic. Painters and plasterers everywhere. Keeping us all in line took serious bossing. Mr. George ran it like his famous hotel. He split the work, hired the best specialists, and watched us like a hawk to ensure pure perfection. He was always here checking on us, touring the mud, grilling the foreman, while the architects kept a close eye. The blueprints were tight, sure, but reality? Stone fights back, paper plans fail, and the wild river weather constantly wrecked our schedules. We found problems no architect could predict. They fixed the designs on the fly, keeping the dream alive. And the main theme? Hearts. Hearts everywhere. It was not silly or cheap, it was pure elegance. Subtle little hearts carved right into the heavy stone above the grand doors. Wrought into iron railings, baked into the floor tiles, shaped into the massive windows. If you just looked around, the hearts whispered exactly why we were building this place. Mr. George planned every single piece. He literally changed the island's name, spelling it H-E-A-R-T. He made us blast the actual shoreline into a heart shape. The whole castle screened the theme. Guests knew instantly. This was not just some rich man showing off. This was his love for Madame Louise, carved in solid rock. By 1902, her Italian gardens were finally blooming. She directed the landscaping teams herself. She demanded strict European elegance, perfect shapes and razor-sharp hedges. Us groundskeepers planted painfully exact flower beds around expensive Italian statues and splashing fountains. Over on the west side, we even had to dig out a massive swan pond. Real living swans were shipped in. Gorgeous, snowy white birds making the whole place look like a fairy tale. We pumped that pond constantly to keep them perfectly healthy. Shady gazebos and stone terraces gave folks a rest. The rich folks could stroll the paths, sip drinks by the fountains, and soak in that pure European luxury right here in the wild river. Right by the main house, we built a dovecote, a fancy little home just for doves, more symbols of peace and romance. They would circle the towers, then fly back home at dusk. Just constant reminders that our island was a peaceful paradise. Fall of 1902 hits. 3 brutal years of work, and the outside of the castle was basically done. 6 massive floors, locked up tight, slate roof pinned down, fancy doors hung. To anyone sailing by, it looked finished, but inside, we had mountains of work left. Crews were slapping up plaster, carving rich wooden mantels, fitting custom cabinets, and hammering down the floors. Heavy marble for the grand halls, rich hardwood for the private suites, and once our powerhouse fired up, we wired blazing electric lights into every single room. Guys were pasting wallpaper, painting up high, hooking up the shiny brass plumbing, and moving furniture. Madame Louise was obsessed. She bought up half of Europe. Heavy curtains, insane carpets, custom sculptures, rich tapestries. The cargo crates just kept arriving at our docks. Inside, it was turning into a museum of the absolute finest art money could buy. The bosses told us the deadline was holding. 2 more hard summers, 1903 and 4, to finish the inside and the green lawns. The master's goal? Valentine's Day, 1905. 2 years left on the clock. Amazingly, we were not even bleeding money yet. $2.5 million. Unthinkable cash, but his fancy New York hotel paid for everything. And get this, you and I know he was also building an $8 million hotel in Philly at the exact same time, managing both monster projects without breaking a single sweat. But Madame Louise's health was failing. That 1902 tuberculosis diagnosis was serious, but we thought she had time. The doctors ordered rest, fresh air, and absolute peace. Heart Island was supposed to be her cure. But by 1903, Madame was fading. I saw how easily she tired. Just walking the castle corridors meant constant stops. She couldn't oversee the grand construction like she desired. Mr. George hired extra hands to manage her usual duties. But Madame, she refused to step away. This was her ultimate dream. She swore she would see it finished. Only then, she promised Mr. George, would she finally rest. This fortress was their sanctuary, her healing ground. Mr. George desperately wanted to believe that. The hardest labor was already finished. Just the final touches left. Soon she could breathe. Everything would be okay. Spring 1903 hit, launching the fourth building season. Inside work moved lightning fast now. Our craftsmen labored year-round, totally protected from the harsh weather. Plasterers smoothed out every wall. Carpenters carved the rich wood. Electricians ran the wires. This grand place felt alive. Madame visited often that summer of 1903. Against every doctor's strict orders, she traveled up here. I watched her sit in the unfinished rooms, mentally placing every single chair. She personally picked the wallpapers and designed the dramatic lighting. It kept her spirit fierce, but her physical strength was completely draining. Her personal doctor hovered constantly, giving medicines, desperately trying to stop the decay. Mr. George could only watch his beloved wife wither. The brilliant woman who worked beside him for 26 years, transforming the Bellevue and Waldorf-Astoria with unstoppable energy, was becoming tragically frail. The best doctors failed. Endless wealth meant absolutely nothing. This massive castle, meant to be their triumph, became a desperate race against death. Fall 1903 closed the fourth building season. The grand fortress was nearly ready. Interiors were done, and the luxurious furniture arrived. The grounds looked incredible. The elegant swan pond was filled. Gardens were planted, just waiting to bloom. Only one more building season left. Spring through fall of 1904. Just the absolute final details and system tests left. Target date? Valentine's Day 1905. The grand reveal, the ultimate romantic gift. Mr. George completely believed Madame would survive to see it. 5 brutal years of work. 300 loyal workers. $2.5 million spent. Every single detail built to honor her vision and bring her pure joy. The most spectacular private castle in America, standing as pure proof of his devotion. In his mind, she just had to recover. This very castle would save her life. The fresh air would heal her. He built a literal monument. Surely, love would conquer all. Over the winter of 1903-04, they returned to our Waldorf-Astoria. Despite around-the-clock medical care, Madame kept fading. Spring 1904 finally hit. The absolute last construction season launched. All our men marched back to Hart Island. The master schedule locked Valentine's Day 1905 for the big finish. Only 10 months left. Just 10 short months. Madame was trapped in Manhattan, too terribly weak to travel up north. She couldn't see her masterpiece. Mr. George just read our daily reports. We were perfectly on schedule. The grand design was coming together flawlessly. The castle would be ready. She just had to survive. Summer 1904. Madame was completely bedridden in New York, surrounded by doctors. Mr. George stayed by her side whenever hotel duties paused. The children visited. Everyone prayed for a miracle that simply wasn't coming. Meanwhile, on Hart Island, our 300 men kept building, totally blind. We installed golden fixtures and polished every stone. We were building a magnificent dream for a dying queen who would never walk its halls. You and I have to understand, Madame Louise was never just his wife. She was his true tactical partner, the absolute backbone of their empire. Back in 1881, when they opened the tiny Bellevue Hotel, it was Madame's brilliant hospitality hacks that made it a massive hit. Fresh flowers everywhere, soft candlelight setting the mood. She turned boring hotel dining into an absolute high society experience, pure elegance in every corner. All her genius ideas. At the massive Waldorf-Astoria, her invisible hand controlled everything behind the scenes, even if high society never realized it. Mr. George handled the raw numbers. Madame crafted the magic. She mapped the floor plans and handpicked every single piece of luxury fabric. She trained us servants to make guests feel truly cherished, not just housed. Her mindset was totally revolutionary for the elite hotel world. She knew wealthy ladies desperately needed gorgeous public spaces outside their mansions, places to safely gather, gossip, and wield their massive social power. Madame engineered those spaces on purpose. Our Waldorf-Astoria became the ultimate battleground for high society women, completely unheard of in Gilded Age New York. But building for strangers is nothing like building your own sanctuary. The hotels had rigid rules. Commercial budgets totally handcuffed her wildest creative desires. You can't go crazy when pleasing thousands of guests. But Hart Island? That was entirely hers. A hidden fortress just for the family. No hotel rules here. Every inch of that castle screamed her name. She actually designed the rooms for cozy family flow, not just showing off. Sure, the main hall was a total flex to stun the rich guests, but the family zones? Warm and human. The bedrooms felt like actual sanctuaries. The sitting rooms begged for real conversation, not stiff posturing. She chose materials brilliantly. Heavy marble for the busy hallways to handle the traffic. Warm hardwood for the family areas. Smooth tiles for us staff in the back rooms. Every single choice perfectly blended raw beauty with tactical function. Madame was utterly obsessed with lighting. She literally invented mood lighting at the hotels. Up on the island, with our own power grid, her glowing vision finally came alive. Let me tell you, it was breathtaking. Grand chandeliers, sleek hallway sconces, perfect library lamps. Every room had a tactical glow. She even forced the architects to map the windows perfectly. Madame demanded brilliant natural light flooding her entire castle. I polished those massive water-facing windows for maximum brightness. Meanwhile, the north side had smaller glass to block out harsh glare. Madame positioned the vents perfectly. Cool breezes, but zero drafts. Every single decoration, pure elegance. I unpacked the crates. Years of European paintings, heavy stone sculptures, and mosaics meant for our grand entryways. We hung tapestries that were gorgeous, not gaudy. She knew exactly where every single couch would sit long before delivery day. I saw her blueprints, chairs angled for whispering, tables put right where we needed them, hidden storage everywhere. She plotted every inch. The master just wrote the checks, but Madame Louise? Those gardens were entirely her masterpiece. Formal Italian layouts, perfectly squared hedges, massive splashing fountains, and stone statues placed just to catch your eye while strolling. We planted color-coded beds, timed to bloom straight through summer. She commanded the landscape architects like a general. But she made the final call, choosing exact trees and shrubs to hide the ugly spots. How the walkways curved, where the resting benches sat, zero guesswork. That swan pond, her brilliant idea. Swans mean eternal grace, pure old-world money. She demanded that exact European elegance right here on Hart Island. We dug that pond deep with perfect filters. Imported swans were meant to live there all year long. At least while the family summered here. Even the master's massive yacht house showed Madame's delicate touch. It wasn't just a basic boat garage. We polished that interior woodwork just as hard as the main castle. Tactical, yet stunning. Hidden gear storage that looked like art. For 26 years, she built beautiful lives for others. Hart Island was her grand prize, a gorgeous fortress for herself, the master, and the children. You and I know how life turns. By 1902, she fell gravely ill. Suddenly, our brilliant architect couldn't walk the sites anymore. We brought the blueprints to her bed. She still gave orders, still approved designs, but touring the island grounds? Impossible. No more climbing stairs to check the guest rooms. She was fading fast. Even we servants never knew the true diagnosis. Whispers in the kitchen said, tuberculosis. Back then, that was a straight-up death sentence, zero cure in sight. The older maids swore it was heart disease. Lingering childhood fever damage, finally tearing her system down. Medicine back in 1900 was basically guesswork. The fancy doctors saw her gasping and weak, but they were flying blind. Whatever the label, our Madame was dying. A slow, agonizing fade, guarded by a round-the-clock medical detail. They dragged a private doctor everywhere, heavy doses of morphine for the agony, maybe digitalis to keep her heart pumping. We served her useless, trendy tonics. The doctor's grand strategy? Just rest, fresh air, and absolutely zero stress. The classic excuse when doctors fail. The Thousand Islands breeze was supposed to be her miracle cure. Clean wind, dead silence, escaping that brutal New York chaos. She watched us build through 1902 and 1903. Barely able to stand, she sat in half-built rooms, eyes closed, painting the finished walls in her mind. We lugged wallpaper samples right to her lap. She couldn't walk the corridors to test them on the plaster anymore. Ordering couches from paper catalogs instead of city shopping. We kept building, but her command shifted to a quiet whisper. The master? Totally broken. All his millions? Utterly useless. The finest doctors of 1900 couldn't fight the shadow stealing her away. He could only ensure her comfort, praying she'd live just long enough to see the final stone laid. Listen to me closely. This grand castle wasn't just a gift anymore. It became a frantic, desperate anchor to keep her breathing. If she could just survive until Valentine's Day 1905. 16 brutal months from the summer of 1903 to see it finished. Walk the finished halls, feel that glory. Maybe it would cure her? The master knew it was crazy, tactically speaking. Bricks don't cure sickness. Pretty walls don't pump blood. But he clung to this impossible fantasy that his monument could somehow save her life. Across the water, the yacht house stood ready. 50 feet tall, massive. 3 huge boat bays, about to be 4. Big enough to swallow all 70 of his boats. An absolute fortress. Madame herself signed off on the final glossy interiors. She watched us lay the foundation, but she'd never actually sail from it. Those lazy summer boating days were completely wiped off the map. La Duchesse, that 104-foot floating palace, sat waiting. The master bought it for epic romantic river cruises with her. Hosting elite friends, conquering the river in luxury. But her body failed. That giant boat was basically a ghost ship of dead dreams now. Alster Tower stood finished. 90 feet of medieval stone hiding our modern bowling alley, billiard tables, and the grand dancing shell. I poured drinks for her at the Bankers Association party back in 1899, right when we first opened those tower doors. I watched her dance in that room, but never again. Now, too fragile to do anything but sit dead still. The powerhouse hummed perfectly, pumping modern electricity through a medieval tower. She approved that too. And you and I both know it's tragic. Madame understood the castle needed solid electricity for grand lighting, but I never saw her experience it fully running. Those Italian gardens she asked us for? Planted, growing perfectly, fountains, paths, all her exact design. But our mistress couldn't walk them anymore. She couldn't rest by her fountains or enjoy the gardens she planned. We had the swan pond ready, but Madame Louise would never see those white birds gliding across that water. She wouldn't smile at them from the high castle windows. Every single stone, every corner of Hart Island, it was born from the mistress's brilliant mind. It showed off her flawless taste, her feeling for grand spaces, and her absolute demand for nothing but the finest quality. She wanted pure elegance, never anything cheap or flashy. But sadly, our mistress was slowly fading away. The brilliant woman who built the empire beside Mr. Boldt was dying. Their partnership, the one that built the Waldorf-Astoria and this castle, was crumbling. No arguments tore them apart, just the cruel, cold hand of sickness. The master could build her a towering fortress, but he couldn't buy her time. January 7th, 1904, in Manhattan. Right around midday, our beloved Louise Augusta Carrer Boldt passed away. Just 42 years old, married 26 years, a mother to two, a hotel pioneer, and the absolute genius behind America's grandest private island castle. The doctors called it heart failure. Whether it was from old tuberculosis damage or pure exhaustion, us servants never fully knew the medical truth. The tragedy was the same. She was gone. Mr. Boldt held her hand. The children, 24-year-old George Jr. and 20-year-old Clover, wept with the doctors. The doctors had nothing left to try. They gave Madam medicine for the pain, but in 1904, comfort was the only miracle available. We all knew the end was close. She had been trapped in bed for weeks, growing weaker. Yet the actual moment still hit us like a brick, that sudden jump from a living light to an empty room. You and I both know death always shocks you. The master's first move proved his utter heartbreak. Within hours, he fired off a telegram straight to Hart Island. The order was devastating. Stop all construction. 300 miles away, our island crews got that terrible telegram by the late afternoon. The wires delivered the news fast, even through the harsh winter freeze. Some guys didn't hear till morning, but the master's command was absolute. Halt everything immediately. Good stonemasons simply dropped their heavy chisels. Carpenters dropped their saws. Painters left wet brushes soaking in cans. Electricians froze mid-wire. Our landscapers walked away from half-dug gardens. 300 strong men dropped their tools and left that island, not just for winter, but forever. The fortress stood maybe 90% done. The grand outside was finished. All 6 stories, tall towers, the thick roof, heavy doors, all locked in place. Most inside work was already perfect. Walls plastered, floors set, fine wood carved. Some rooms were fully furnished, waiting for the family to arrive. Our powerhouse was humming. The grand yacht house was ready. Alster Tower was done years ago, and the massive gardens were finally blooming. The pond waited empty for its swans. The giant stone arch stood proudly at the water. 4.5 grueling years of our sweat, $2.5 million spent. Hundreds of thousands of back-breaking hours by our crew. America's largest private castle was just a breath away from opening its doors. Every single brick was laid for the mistress. The grand reveal was planned for next Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1905. One more summer season would have crowned it, but Madam was gone. The entire castle belonged to her. Without our mistress, the stone meant nothing. Mr. Boldt halted the work and never changed his mind. He never stepped onto Hart Island again. Every paper reported this about Boldt Castle, even if a few gossipy reporters claimed he might have sneaked back for a quiet look later. But we staff know the truth. The master never returned after losing her. He absolutely never lived there, never finished her dream, and never threw those grand parties. That single telegram became the heartbreak of the castle's legend. That heavy moment when 300 loyal men just dropped their heavy tools. The beautiful dream died right there. A monument of love turned into a silent tomb. People love to romanticize it. They say the master's grief crushed him. A castle without Madame Louise was just cold rock. He abandoned it out of pure, bleeding devotion. Now stick with me. Some saw the practical side. Books like In Search of the Lost Story claim the mistress was the real boss of that massive project. Mr. Boldt paid the massive bills, sure, but she was the architect. With her gone, why finish a giant fortress that he only built to see her smile? Some staff whispered about the wild costs. $2.5 million gone, and we still needed one more expensive season. Maybe the master used the tragedy to finally cut off a wild, expensive dream he was already quietly worried about. Honestly, both could be true. The master was absolutely drowning in real grief. Anyone could guarantee you that fact. 26 years by his side. Every empire he raised, she was his foundation. Her death ruined him, but he was still a sharp businessman. The whole island was for her. She was gone. Finishing it wouldn't bring our mistress back. Throwing thousands more at an empty ghost house made zero business sense. A broken heart and a sharp mind can easily coexist. The final result? Total silence. Work halted forever. The Grand Fortress froze in time on January 7, 1904. The master dragged himself back to the Waldorf-Astoria quickly. He had thousands of us relying on his paychecks. Even devastating grief couldn't pause the gears of America's most elite, demanding hotel. We also had the brand new Bellevue Stratford running. It opened its doors in 1904, right when we lost her. It needed his iron grip to conquer Philadelphia's brutal hotel market. The master worked himself to the bone. The only alternative was facing the endless dark. For Mr. Boldt, work became everything: purpose, distraction, survival. I watched the master push himself harder than ever, yet every single summer we still returned to the Thousand Islands. Not Hart Island, obviously. That stayed entirely abandoned. We stayed on Wellesley Island instead, where he kept our farms running. He had loved those summers for years. I knew he wouldn't abandon the whole region just because Hart Island held so much grief. George Jr. and Clover stepped up, helping run the businesses. George Jr. was studying at Cornell University. Mr. Boldt was a trustee, but the boy still helped us manage the hotels during breaks. Clover was 20 now. She understood the business perfectly, even if women rarely got formal roles back then. We all slowly adjusted to Louise's absence. Work continued, life moved on, but I knew something fundamental was broken forever. The partnership that built everything was gone. We buried Mrs. Louise at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. Mr. Boldt would join her there 12 years later, but that was still a long way off. January 1904. Mr. Boldt was 52, wealthy beyond belief, but completely, utterly alone. Just 300 meters north on Hart Island, the castle sat completely empty, dead windows staring at the frozen river. Rooms were left totally unfinished. Gardens waited for a spring that would never bring the workers back. Tools sat exactly where they fell. Let me tell you, that castle stood rotting for 73 years. It wasn't a monument to a fulfilled romance anymore. It was a tragic, interrupted love. A grand promise completely shattered by death. George Boldt tried to build his beloved wife a castle. She never lived to see it. He never finished it. That one horrible telegram had said absolutely everything. Stop all construction. Those were his orders. For 73 years, absolutely nothing moved on Hart Island except wind, water, and time. The long abandonment. Hart Island, January 1904. The massive castle stood completely silent, workers gone, heavy construction equipment left behind. Scaffolding, toolboxes, huge stockpiles of materials, all waiting for work that would never happen. Brutal winter snow buried the unfinished stone. Ice choked the beautiful fountain pools Louise designed. The island waited desperately for a spring that brought nothing. Meanwhile, Mr. Boldt continued spending his summers up in the Thousand Islands. But never on Hart Island. He refused to ever return there. He stayed at his Wellesley Island farms instead. We kept those specific properties perfectly maintained. He kept operating the golf course, the polo field, those rental cottages. The Thousand Islands had always been his grand summer refuge. Even Louise's tragic passing couldn't change that completely. It just made Hart Island completely off limits. From Wellesley Island, I saw him stare across the water. Hart Island was so close. The castle was a brutal, constant reminder of his dream, and exactly why it stayed unfinished. Was that view painful or comforting to him? He never told us. He just kept running the Waldorf-Astoria and Bellevue Stratford. Both hotels stayed incredibly, massively successful. His massive wealth actually kept growing. The legendary hospitality empire he and Mrs. Louise built together kept right on functioning, even without her. Mr. Boldt kept up his quiet philanthropy. He always supported young people seeking education. I saw the private ledgers. He anonymously funded college for at least 75 students over his life. Whenever staff faced money trouble, he stepped up. He heavily funded every charity Louise loved, honoring her beautiful memory. But you have to understand, he never mentioned Hart Island, never discussed the castle, never ever explained why he abandoned it. That part of his life was permanently sealed. Then came December 5, 1916. Mr. Boldt suffered a massive heart attack inside his Waldorf-Astoria suite. He died that very day, 65 years old, passing 12 years after Louise. His funeral was absolutely massive. Traffic on Fifth Avenue completely stopped as we marched from the Waldorf-Astoria. The pallbearers? Some of the absolute most powerful men in America. Major business leaders, legendary politicians, top society figures. The New York Times obituary stated it perfectly. He, more than anyone else, single-handedly created the modern American hotel. We buried him at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, right beside Louise. His estate? Valued around $15 million. That is basically $400 million today. His will split everything evenly between George Jr. and Clover, asking them to keep funding his charities. And of course, the children inherited that giant empty castle. They also inherited the massive nightmare of what to actually do with it. Neither wanted to finish construction. That grand project was their parents' dream, not theirs. Finishing that castle wouldn't ever bring their mother back. It would just burn through massive amounts of money, maintaining a place they would never use. So in 1918, 2 years after the master died, the siblings finally sold Hart Island. The buyer? Edward John Noble, a businessman from nearby Gouverneur, New York. Noble owned the Beechnut Fruit Company. He had already become ridiculously wealthy through a very clever investment in Lifesavers candy. He was aggressively expanding business in the Thousand Islands region and saw a huge opportunity in that famous castle. Noble paid an entirely undisclosed sum for Hart Island. Rumor had it, he paid way below construction cost, maybe a few $100,000 for a masterpiece that had already burned through $2.5 million. But remember, it had sat entirely abandoned for 14 years. Its true value was completely unclear. Noble had vague, grand plans to develop Hart Island commercially. Maybe a hotel, a resort, or a tourist attraction. The castle was already famous, honestly. Newspapers had covered its crazy construction and sudden abandonment for years. People were deeply curious. He figured that curiosity could be monetized, but Noble never invested a dime in its completion or any serious restoration. Instead, he casually opened Hart Island to tourists. Local boat operators started dropping visitors off. Complete strangers could wander the grounds and explore the master's empty castle. No admission fee, just open access. This terrible decision, letting the public roam wild without real security or maintenance, was absolutely disastrous for the fragile castle. Over the decades, we watched Hart Island suffer 3 cruel forms of destruction: brutal weather, senseless vandalism, and opportunistic theft. The weather was totally relentless. Thousand Islands winters are harsh. Heavy snow piles up quickly. Ice encases everything. The mighty St. Lawrence River freezes solid, battering all exposed structures. Vicious wind tears at the roofs. Water seeps inside, freezing, expanding, and violently cracking the stone mortar. The castle was never fully sealed against the elements. Sure, some windows were installed, but rooms stayed unfinished. Most doors didn't even have proper locks. Water poured in. Winter after winter, I watched ice split the plaster I once cleaned. Beautiful woodwork warped. The grand roofs leaked everywhere. Our fine gutters failed. The rot spread. The powerhouse took the worst of it. 1939. A careless fireworks display caught the grand wooden roof on fire. That fire devoured everything we had built. Only the bare stones survived. For decades, I had to stare at that blackened shell, the worst scar on our beautiful island. Then came the trespassers. With us servants gone and no guards left, these strangers treated my master's castle like a cheap playground. They defaced our elegant walls. Names, dates, garbage scrawled everywhere, scratched deep into the plaster we used to dust so carefully. Thousands of names shouting they were here. They deliberately shattered windows, smashed the beautiful decor, bashed holes straight through walls. Kids threw parties in our halls, leaving trash, empty bottles, endless ruin, so entirely casual, absolutely thoughtless. They ruined it just because nobody stopped them. But the thieves, they were worse. Anything I used to polish that they could carry, gone. They ripped out the copper pipes and wiring for scrap, pried the master's decorative metal right off the grand railings, chiseled out tiles, stole our custom-carved wood. Heavy light fixtures vanished, elegant door hardware, window fittings, every piece of brass, stolen. 1942. The war broke out and they came for our island's iron and steel, stripped it bare, said they needed the metal for the war effort. Men tore out the structural supports and decorative iron. It gutted the castle's very bones. Whole sections collapsed later because of that exact theft. Lady Louise's beautiful Italian gardens turned wild. Without us tending them, nasty weeds choked her flowers. The pristine hedges turned feral. Grand fountain pools cracked full of garbage. Statues pushed over. Our immaculate walking paths completely vanished. Our perfectly sculpted grounds just died out into wilderness. That majestic swan pond turned stagnant. They never even brought the swans, just rotting algae and dead leaves. Eventually, it just looked like a sad, muddy ditch. Now, the master's yacht house over on Wellesley Island, that held up slightly better. People actually used it, so it survived longer. But without proper servants, it still rotted. Leaking roof, smashed glass. Ulster Tower somehow stayed on its feet, though heavily scarred. The basement bowling alley flooded completely. Trespassers trashed the beautiful shell room. Broken glass everywhere. Yet, miraculously, the tower's bones refused to snap. Its strange slanting walls and weird design actually saved it from fully crumbling down. Look closely with me. By the 50s and 60s, our island was a ghost story. Photos made my master's home look dead for centuries, not decades. Sickly vines choking crumbling stone. Empty windows staring out like dead eyes. This miserable decay actually drew in tourists and photographers, fascinated by our tragedy. Outsiders dared to call it a beautiful Gothic ruin, a monument to lost love. The literal, physical shape of Mr. Boldt's grief. The master's broken heart, etched in shattered stone. But that poetic nonsense ignored the truth. The castle was simply dying because nobody cared for it. Edward Noble passed in 1958. His foundation took over our island. They let the tourists roam free, but spent absolutely zero on fixing things. The rotting sped up. Come the 1970s, engineers looked at our home and called it a death trap. The grand walls were tipping. The floors I used to sweep, ready to cave in. They honestly considered taking wrecking balls to the entire place. The Noble Foundation refused to spend the millions needed to save it. But they knew my master's estate still drew a massive crowd. So they hunted for someone else to fix it, someone to run it for the public. In 1977, salvation arrived. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority stepped up. Now these were the folks running the massive bridges linking America and Canada right over our St. Lawrence River. They made their money on tolls, sure, but their real job was boosting the region's wealth. And tourism? That was the lifeblood around here. You and I know our ruined castle still drew eyes, but a restored Boldt castle? That would bring thousands. True wealth back to the islands. They saw the golden opportunity. They talked it out, and the Noble Foundation practically gave my master's estate away for free. $1. That was the rumored price. The catch? The Bridge Authority had to run our beautiful home strictly as a nonprofit. Every dime from tickets and tours had to go directly into fixing and cleaning the estate. 0 government handouts allowed. The castle had to survive on its own sweat, and they actually agreed. An insane gamble, honestly. They were adopting a shattered, waterlogged ruin that demanded millions in repairs. Absolutely zero promise it would ever make a profit. But the sheer potential for the islands made it worth it. Fall of 1977, the papers were signed. Our island had new masters. The Bridge Authority officially held the keys to Hart Island and the entire Boldt estate. They walked the halls immediately to see what needed fixing. It was a nightmare. 73 years of total neglect had nearly destroyed everything we built. The fine powerhouse? Just scorched rock. The main residence was soaking wet from roof to cellar. My pristine plaster shattered everywhere. Rotting floors. Barely a single window left intact, cracked stone and rusting steel. Lady Louise's magnificent gardens swallowed by thick brush. $15 million. That was the guess just to keep the roof from caving in on us. Giving Mr. Boldt his dream back? That would cost a fortune. These new caretakers were going to need an avalanche of ticket money to survive. They planned to reopen our gates by the spring of 1978. Not as the polished palace you and I remember, but as a raw, wounded survivor, letting the world see just how hard rebuilding a broken heart really is. Every year, strangers arrived to watch our progress. The promise was incredibly honest. This was my master's ruined dream, finally being saved. Come witness history waking up. Every coin you paid went straight into restoring it. You weren't just visiting a castle. You were rescuing our home. Spring 1978. Hart Island finally opened its gates again after the Bridge Authority took control. That first season, 99,000 people walked those paths. Honestly, way more than anyone expected. The tragic story of Madame Louise, combined with all that hammering and scaffolding, it drew massive crowds. Their money immediately funded the most desperate repairs. Walls ready to collapse were braced. The shattered roofs got patched. They locked down the grounds and finally hacked away decades of wild, choking thorns. You could actually see it happening. Scaffolding everywhere, masons sweating over the stones. Real progress. And the next year, even more people showed up. More money meant more repairs. A beautiful cycle started. As the halls regained their glory, bigger crowds poured in, paying for even more stonework. By the early 1980s, the impossible was happening. The grand first-floor rooms of Mr. Boldt's main castle were actually coming back to life. They found the old blueprints and the exact unused stone we left behind in 1904. Master craftsmen picked up where we stopped, recreating what Mr. Boldt and Madame Louise would have seen in 1905. Their approach was brilliant. Certain rooms were completely finished, polished, and furnished, exactly how I remember my master planning them. But other wings? Left totally raw, showing the bare bones. They even kept the vandal scars, a dark reminder of our lost years. Up on the third and fourth floors, the walls remained completely bare. That was no accident. Polishing every single room wasn't the point. Our heartbreak is part of the legacy. The real power of this castle? It is broken. Mr. Boldt's agonizing grief, frozen in time. Madame Louise's empty space, painfully obvious. The ruined powerhouse was only partially rebuilt. Inside, they made it an exhibit instead of the loud generator room I remember. But outside, the terrible fire damage was scrubbed away, restoring its proud, commanding silhouette. The old yacht house needed a miracle. Massive structural fixes, fresh roofing, and all new glass. Eventually, they opened its heavy doors again, filling it with stunning, antique boats gifted from a museum over in Clayton, New York. Those vessels showed the strangers how we sailed during our Gilded Age glory. Outside, the wild gardens were slowly tamed, though not exactly how Madame Louise originally sketched them. 73 years of weeds made her exact vision impossible. Still, beautiful formal Italian gardens bloomed in her honor. The cracked fountains were sealed and flooded with water. Sharp hedges were shaped. Vibrant flowers took root. Even the fallen statues were carved anew. And honestly, the work never stopped. Over 40 years later, the hammers are still swinging. Roughly $38 million poured into the stone, all from visitor tickets without a single government penny. Year after year, more hallways gleam, old rooms wake up, and the gardens flourish. The crowd swelled from 99,000 back in 1978, hitting over 200,000 during the best years. Our humble, tragic island is now one of the top 25 most visited historic homes in America. From mid-May to mid-October, thousands step off the boats every single day. Mr. Boldt's grand gift to his wife sat rotting for 73 years, crushed by weather, almost bulldozed into the river entirely. But it lived. Not because of Mr. Boldt, not even his children. Strangers saved it, realizing some ruins are just too beautiful to die. My master never set foot on Hart Island again after that bitter January day in 1904. He ordered this fortress for his love, then dropped his tools the second she passed. A choice forged in agony. But thankfully, grief doesn't write the final chapter. Today, our halls stand tall. Not as the rotting tomb he left behind, but transformed. A towering shrine to their romance, sure, but also to sheer stubbornness and the fierce belief that even shattered things can be pulled from the ashes. My masters never got to sleep in their grand bedroom, yet millions have walked its floors. The ultimate gift for one woman, now shared with the entire world, pure resurrection. Back in 1977, our quiet island faced a terrifying choice. Rebuild it or tear it down. The Bridge Authority claimed the deeds, swearing an oath that every single tourist ticket would go directly into saving the stone. But honestly, you and I couldn't imagine the rot. 73 brutal winters, scavengers, fires, crumbling beams, and vicious water damage eating away at everything we built. The first massive hurdle? Keeping people alive. Before unlocking the docks, they had to guarantee the ruins wouldn't literally crush the new guests. Shifting walls demanded iron braces. Rotted floors needed supports or solid barricades. Every loose stone had to be securely pinned down. They scoured every inch just to map the deadly hazards. Through that freezing winter of '77, brave crews rushed emergency bracing. They threw tarps over gaping roof wounds, hammered pillars beneath sagging arches, and fenced off the absolute worst death traps. This wasn't about beauty, yet. They just had to stop the bleeding, making the ruins safe enough for people to finally walk through. Spring 1978. The island woke up. We didn't open as some flawless museum, but as a raw, bleeding work in progress. People stepped through our wreckage, staring at the raw devastation 7 decades of silence had caused. Smashed windows, ugly graffiti, peeling plaster that showed our naked bricks. The gardens were jungles. But amid the decay, they saw masons fighting to save us. High scaffolds wrapped the towers, men chiseling fresh stone, supplies piled high. The silent promise was undeniable. We are saving this place, and your ticket is buying the cement. Return next year. Watch us grow. And honestly, it worked flawlessly. 99,000 curious souls flooded the island, completely shattering all expectations. The cash paid for heavier braces and breathing life into our grandest rooms. Mr. Boldt's sprawling first-floor entrance hall became the top priority. First impressions matter. If the entry dazzled, people would believe in the dream. The rules were strict from day one. No modern guessing, no making things up. The mission was finishing my master's exact vision. By some miracle, the Hewitt brothers' original blueprints had survived those long, dark years. I remember the old photographs, the very materials we left behind in 1904. Unused tiles, heavy brass hardware. The modern craftsman studied the pieces we left behind with absolute precision, replicating Master George's exact vision, room by room. If my master's blueprints demanded specific tiles, they built them. Same with Lady Louise's wallpaper. You and I are watching an archaeological dig into my family's past, fulfilling their interrupted dream, but not entirely. They deliberately left some rooms untouched. The upper floors sit exactly as we abandoned them. Hollow spaces, bare bones exposed. Raw stone, scarred by time and vandals. A tactical choice. First, the reality. Finishing 120 massive rooms to our old standards would cost tens of millions. The new authority had to balance grand ambition against tight budgets. Focusing on the grandest public halls just made sense. Halting work on servant quarters was smart. Second, it tells a story. Those bare walls speak louder than any fully polished room ever could. When visitors walk those empty upper halls, they finally feel the weight of our sudden halt. The clash between the glorious main floor and the brutal third floor makes the tragedy real. Third, pure authenticity. This castle's true power lies in its broken state. Master George never finished it. Hiding that fact erases our history. The modern crew understood. The silence is part of the legacy. Some chambers must remain exactly as we left them. Tools dropped, a beautiful dream crushed. They secured the powerhouse early on. That massive 1939 fire took the roof and floors, leaving nothing but bare stone. The team rebuilt that roof, returning the outside to its original glory, turning the inside into a gallery. They even show how we pumped steam electricity back in the day. Using our old pictures, they turned the powerhouse into a living lesson of our history. Out on Wellesley Island, the yacht house needed serious reinforcements. Thankfully, our original 1900 steel beams held strong. Quality engineering. But everything else was a mess. They needed fresh roofs, new glass, heavy door repairs, and endless scrubbing. Once stabilized, they brought in gorgeous antique boats borrowed from Clayton. It finally shows people the sheer scale of Master George's fleet and our river culture. The gardens, an absolute nightmare to fix. Over 7 decades of neglect completely wiped out Lady Louise's beautiful flowers. Wild trees swallowed the beds, hedges vanished, fountains cracked, and walkways faded into the dirt. A simple cleanup wasn't going to work. They rebuilt everything from scratch using our old photos and memories. They started underground, fixing fountain basins to hold water again, carving out stone paths, laying drainage. Then came the plants, though they couldn't perfectly match my lady's seeds. Our records were lost, but they managed to recreate those majestic Italian gardens in her honor. Sharp geometric beds, low borders, and flowers arranged for perfect seasonal colors. It was a slow battle. Gardens demand patience. Hedges take years to actually thicken up. Trees need decades to stand tall. Yet every single spring looked better. The stone paths emerged. The wildness finally surrendered to order. The grounds finally looked exactly like Lady Louise wanted. Now you and I must look inside. Year 1? Just the grand entrance and a couple of parlors. Year 2, they secured the main floor. Year 3, moving upstairs. Every single room demanded months of grueling labor from absolute masters. Plasterers fixed the broken walls using our old-school methods. Woodworkers carved replacements for every single piece the looters had stolen from us. They installed classic lighting. Our originals were stolen, but these careful reproductions, strikingly accurate. Specialists saved the ruined wood and marble floors. Painters tested chips to perfectly match Lady Louise's exact color choices. The windows were a nightmare, smashed or just gone. They had to order custom glass, capturing the exact size, style, and wavy imperfections of 1900 craftsmanship. Brass latches were forged to match our surviving pieces. Every single pane was a custom job. Filling these massive halls took serious hunting. My master's original furniture was stolen, burned to ashes, or pawned off decades ago. They studied my old photos to see exactly what Lady Louise liked. Then they tracked down real Gilded Age antiques to fill the void, hitting dealers, wealthy estate sales, and begging museums for loans. Every room got authentic period pieces fitting its true purpose. By the mid-1980s, our grand main floor felt alive once again. People could finally walk the grand hall and dining rooms, seeing exactly what Master George and Lady Louise intended to finish by 1905. That jarring shift between the lavish bottom and ruined top, completely intentional. Eventually, they pushed upward through the 80s and 90s. Family suites saved, heavy iron baths installed, parlors glowing again. Out of 120 rooms, they did just enough to show how we truly lived. Now the second floor holds a shop and a cinema. They play a film about my master, Lady Louise, our sudden tragedy, and this incredible rescue mission. It plays for 16 minutes, giving strangers the context you and I share to truly understand these walls. The crowd swelled massively through the decades. Seeing 100,000 faces a year became our new normal. By the year 2000, over 200,000 people swarmed the island during our short 6-month window, from mid-May to mid-October, whenever the St. Lawrence waters actually allowed safe passage. The wealth flowed back into the Thousand Islands. Strangers coming to honor Master George stayed in nearby inns, dined locally, and brought life back to the surrounding shores. Our broken castle became the absolute heart of the river. Our new masters, the Bridge Authority, took a massive tactical gamble in 1977. It paid off perfectly. By 2000, we poured $15 million into resurrecting this estate. Over $30 million by 2010, nearly $40 million by 2020. Every single admission dollar we collected, minus our upkeep, went straight back into fortifying the grounds. No government gold, no charity. My master's castle literally funded its own epic resurrection entirely through the coins of our daily visitors. This tactical model was unheard of for historic ruins. It proved massive restoration could actually sustain itself, provided the spectacle drew enough curious eyes. My duties never end. Restoration continues today. Constant maintenance. Roofs demand repair. The heavy stone walls require repointing. Paint fades. New missions launch constantly. Right now we are executing a brutal 15-year tactical restoration on the Ulster Tower. We rebuild the channel-side fountains exactly as Lord George designed them. Every season shows visible progress. But honestly, some elements, like those dark connecting tunnels, will remain forever unfinished. Master George wanted trolley tracks, but we scrapped that plan. Some upper chambers will stay completely empty. This grand fortress will always remain beautifully, tragically incomplete. We leave it that way on purpose. The raw, unfinished stone tells our tragic story. But what we did restore? Absolute perfection. The first 2 main floors look genuinely magnificent. The powerhouse stands tall again. The yacht house operates flawlessly. Our gardens look immaculate. This entire estate finally radiates the absolute grandeur my master and mistress originally envisioned. Hart Island now runs on a strict seasonal schedule, opening mid-May, closing mid-October. During operations, our fortress remains accessible only by boat. Tour fleets launch constant trips from Alexandria Bay and nearby outposts. Independent private vessels can also dock and inspect our grounds. A shuttle links Hart Island to the Wellesley Island Yacht House. We deploy about 60 seasonal servants every single summer to run this empire. Gatekeepers, guides, maintenance squads, shop workers, groundskeepers, cafe staff at the Ulster Tower, and full security. Our operational logistics are absolutely massive. You and I know handling 200,000 guests a year takes insane infrastructure. Weddings are our major gold mine now. We operate one of New York State's absolute top wedding venues. I oversee over 100 weddings a year here on Hart Island. Couples pledge their lives in our Italian gardens, the Ulster Tower, and hidden romantic spots across the territory. This towering monument to my master and mistress's love? It serves as the ultimate battleground where new couples forge their own eternal pacts. The irony hits me hard. Master George built this fortress for one woman alone, a strictly private gift. Now, hundreds of thousands of strangers invade these halls every year. Thousands of couples have married on our grounds, the most secretive, personal gesture imaginable, transformed into a massively public monument. Honestly, that feels right. True love shouldn't stay buried. Master George and Lady Louise were an unstoppable duo, building massive hotel empires, creating beauty, fueling each other's wildest dreams. Their synergy was legendary. Their epic history demands to be told, and this castle makes it real. The Thousand Islands Bridge Authority proved to be the ultimate loyal stewards for this mission. They claimed a broken, completely unsalvageable ruin and literally forged it into one of the most heavily visited historic fortresses in all of America. Zero government backing, zero wealthy lords dropping gold. They pulled this off using pure tactical management and an unyielding loyalty to the estate's true value. The revival of Boldt Castle is an absolute victory. Abandoned for 73 long years and facing total demolition, this place was snatched from death and rebuilt into a powerful, living public sanctuary. This strategy could save other dying strongholds. Ancient properties financing their own survival through gate revenue, assuming their legend pulls in enough curious souls. But stick with me. The real power here is the lore. A dishwasher grinding his way to absolute hotel royalty, forging a massive empire alongside his beloved wife. Then, constructing this towering castle as the ultimate, impossible romantic gesture. Then, her sudden death. Everything shattered. Decades of rotting abandonment, and finally, our epic rescue mission. That raw tragedy hits people way harder than boring architectural facts. Guests flood our gates for the lore. They desperately want to walk the exact stone paths my masters walked. They stand in Lady Louise's rooms, feeling the crushing weight of unfinished walls, witnessing a reborn legacy. Our restoration commanders totally understood this mission. We weren't just patching up broken rocks, we were guarding a legend. Every tactical choice amplified the lore. The finished chambers showcase my master's grand vision. Empty rooms display his heartbreak. Gardens project pure elegance. The ruins honor his endless grief. This entire estate screams their complete, tragic epic. Ambition, devotion, brutal loss, decay, and finally, resurrection. Hart Island became something Master George never could have predicted. A massive public shrine honoring his private obsession. A fortress forged for one queen, now swarmed by millions. A gift shattered by death, rebuilt by nameless servants. An abandoned dream, dragged back from hell by total strangers. Master George froze construction on January 7, 1904. The Bridge Authority finally restarted our engines on May 20, 1978. A crushing 74-year gap. But the mighty foundation my master laid? We finished it. Not exactly to his original blueprints, but in a way that respects his absolute devotion while serving a new era. But hey, the castle still stands. That's what really matters. George built this for his Louise, but you and the world saved it for yourselves. Both missions are beautiful. Both legacies are honored here today. So what actually survived? Welcome to Hart Island during operating season. Transports arrive constantly, unloading civilians from Alexandria Bay. Approaching by water feels incredibly dramatic, exactly as my master planned. The fortress pierces the canopy, towers dominating the distant skyline. Rose-gray granite glows in the sunlight. As your boat approaches, the sheer scale hits hard. This stronghold is massive, totally real, and fiercely permanent. Guests disembark right at the island's defensive edge. Most deploy from tour fleets. Uncle Sam Boat Tours runs constant drops, though independent private boaters frequently dock to inspect our territory. Our massive docks handle civilian fleets. Everyone enters the domain strictly on foot, zero vehicles. Just stone paths linking our towering structures. The giant peristyle arch guards the water's edge, even though Lord George's heavy drawbridge never got fully installed. Our guests march right past it, advancing straight toward the main citadel. I keep the paved paths absolutely flawless. Beautiful gardens flank the route. Lady Louise's strict Italian formal style fully resurrected. Vibrant flower beds, razor-sharp hedges, and crystal fountain pools. Summer hits. Everything blooms. The grounds stay completely immaculate. You breach the main castle entrance right on the ground floor. Let me show you around. Step through these massive wooden doors into our grand hall. I remember when they finished this space perfectly. Plastered walls, patterned tiles, carved woodwork. Look at that sweeping staircase rising to the upper floors. The hall looks exactly as Master George intended back in 1905. Over on the right, the drawing and dining rooms are fully restored, furniture placed just right, paintings hung, heavy curtains drawn, and rich carpets laid out perfectly. These rooms show exactly what Master George and Lady Louise wanted. Elegant, never overwhelmingly flashy. They wanted comfortable spaces for our family and honored guests, not just impressive showrooms. To your left, you will find the library and our smaller sitting areas. Again, completely finished. You can walk through and see how a true high society family lived back then. Though yes, the spaces are roped off now. No touching the master's furniture. But look closely at the details. Imagine them actually living here. Walk the first floor and you will spot hidden hearts in the decor. Carved into wood, shaped in tile, cast into metal. Subtle, unless you know exactly where to look. But once you notice them, hearts everywhere. Master George's devotion woven into every single surface. Now, the second floor houses our family bedrooms and private quarters. The Master and Lady Suite is fully restored. A massive bedroom, quiet sitting area, and private bathroom with classic fixtures. Young Master George and Miss Clover's rooms are furnished perfectly for young nobles of that era. Our guest bedrooms show exactly how we treated VIP visitors. These bathrooms amaze people today. Having multiple bathrooms with full plumbing was absolute luxury in 1900. Porcelain fixtures, pristine tile, pure copper piping, total high-end convenience. This castle rivaled the Waldorf-Astoria in raw tech. Today, this second floor also holds a gift shop and a small theater. That theater plays a documentary about our estate's tragic history. I highly recommend watching it before you walk the grounds. It gives the context you need to truly feel this place. Afterward, the gift shop offers books, postcards, and little souvenirs. Every purchase helps restore my master's dream. Up on the third and fourth floors, things are mostly unfinished, deliberately, completely empty rooms. Bare walls, raw exposed beams, shattered windows. Some rooms even preserve the ugly graffiti from decades of vandalism. Names and messages scrawled when our grand castle was abandoned. The current restoration crew left it as historical proof. Walking these empty, ghostly floors gives you a seriously powerful chill. Perfect elegance below, brutal incompleteness right above. Stick with me here, because this shift is jarring. You instantly feel what halting construction meant. These floors hold the futures that never happened. Rooms Lady Louise never decorated. Spaces Master George never got to see finished. Some upper rooms hold exhibit panels. They explain old construction methods, display historic photographs, and reveal masters' original plans. These raw areas teach you exactly how we built this fortress and what was planned. Down in the basement, it is mostly unfinished. My kitchen area? Barely complete. The grand storage rooms sit empty. The indoor swimming pool is just a dry, sad concrete pit, never once filled. Heavy mechanical and utility spaces just sitting there. The underground tunnels connecting the buildings are pitch black. You can walk these dark passages on guided tours, feeling the hidden infrastructure the master designed. Outside, the Italian gardens are restored to pure elegance. Crisp geometric flower beds, rushing fountains, and clear water flowing through pools. Elegant statues line the pathways, alongside razor-sharp trimmed hedges. Winding stone paths pull you through the gardens, offering breathtaking views of the estate. Take a seat on a bench and just breathe. The swan pond is fully functional again. Real swans live there all summer, pure white and graceful, exactly as Lady Louise dreamed. Watching them glide, rest on the banks, or circle the island is magical. They are the estate's living, breathing beauty. And the stone dovecote still stands nearby. Beautiful doves actually live there, flying across the grounds and returning to roost. It brings my lady's ultimate vision to life, adding constant movement and music to the air. Gentle cooing, beating wings, pure life breathing inside architectural perfection. The Alster Tower remains one of our estate's absolute most fascinating structures. You can tour it yourself. Check out the basement bowling alley, the heavy billiard room, the private library, guest bedrooms, and that stunning shell room up top. We are slowly restoring the tower, but it remains fully open. The cafe inside serves light food and fresh drinks. Sit quietly in the shell room, stare out at the St. Lawrence River, and just imagine the legendary parties Master and Lady would have thrown. Our powerhouse looks flawless outside and holds exhibits inside. Panels break down the massive steam generators and exactly how we routed the estate's electricity. Old photographs show the original heavy equipment during construction. This entire building proves our pure technological power. Master George demanded absolute modern power systems, all hidden behind classical medieval architecture. The grand yacht house on Wellesley Island, just take the half-hour shuttle boat over. The structure is an absolute beast, over 50 feet high with 3 massive bays opening right into the water. Inside, gorgeous antique wooden boats sit on loan from the local museum. Everything from tiny rowboats to massive, roaring motorized craft, showing the crazy variety my master owned. One bay used to house La Duchesse, a colossal 104-foot houseboat. Sadly, that magnificent vessel is no longer docked with us. She is at the Antique Boat Museum in Clayton now, but our detailed photographs perfectly capture her massive size and absolute luxury. Master George built it for epic extended cruises through the Thousand Islands. This massive yacht house proves his absolute obsession. The man easily commanded a fleet of over 70 watercraft. We could dock ships up to 128 feet long. This was never some casual weekend hobby. This was a hardcore maritime empire that required massive infrastructure across the estate. Read our panels to uncover the deep history, construction secrets, the family's background, master's blueprints, and the painful story of abandonment and eventual glorious rebirth. You can explore alone or join one of the guided tours for the deepest secrets. Take photos freely. The estate is flawless from every angle. Couples love posing here for their wedding portraits. I watch these modern families take their pictures, artists sketching our master's vision. These grounds still command absolute attention. We open the gates from mid-May through mid-October. I maintain the schedule, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., extending during the summer peak. Then a gradual quiet returns. By late October, the cold bites, ice forms. Running the master's estate simply becomes impossible. We spend late fall winterizing, defending the master's halls against the freezing cold, but during the season, absolute chaos. Tour boats arriving endlessly at our docks. Multiple vessels docking at once. Hundreds of strangers flooding the master's island. The shops packed, long lines forming just to capture our magnificent views. Summer weekends are relentless, yet even flooded with strangers, the master's estate remains flawless. The grand design easily absorbs the massive crowds. Lady Louise's gardens still offer absolute peace. The vast layout scatters the intruders, but honestly, the real miracle is how well this castle survived. 73 long years of rot, vandals tearing at the walls. To see my master's fortress standing strong today, it is nothing short of miraculous. The new caretakers have been surgical with their restoration. True craftsmen, perfectly reviving the master's original glorious details. Honestly, the grounds today look even more spectacular than if Master George had finished it back in 1905. Modern tactics give these walls serious armor, but the master's work will never be fully completed. That is by design. The upper floors remain beautifully empty. Certain outer walls will forever show their raw, unfinished scars. The tragedy of that interruption is where the true power lies. What we saved is legendary. Restored halls, perfect grounds, the master's grand vision, completely respected. Master George's dream, made real for millions, a gift meant for Lady Louise, now shared with the entire world. Strangers leave our island, understanding love, crushing loss, and death. The master's fortress teaches them without speaking a single word. Walk with me through these restored halls, pure triumph. Step into the empty rooms, pure heartbreak. Stand in Lady Louise's gardens and just breathe. Look at my master and lady's portraits, true partners. This monument works through brutal honesty. We never pretend Master George finished it. We don't hide the dark years. We acknowledge the pain. The estate tells the truth. Ambition violently interrupted. Love shattered by death. Decades of decay. The grand rescue. All of it honored here. What survived matters. Not just the cold stone, but their tragic story. Not just walls, but a soul. Today, Hart Island is my master's ultimate gift, delivered 74 years late to a world he never anticipated. Lady Louise never saw it done, but millions have. My master's private tribute became a global fortress of love, raw, unbreakable, and worth protecting forever. A true monument. Today, they use our island for weddings, tours, and regional wealth. But at its core, it remains exactly what Master George commanded, an absolute fortress of love. Over 100 couples take their vows at the castle annually. They wed in Lady Louise's Italian gardens, inside the Ulster Tower looking over the crashing river. Out on the grand terraces. Everywhere on the estate becomes a romantic battlefield. Every new vow adds life to the very island where my master's legendary romance was tragically cut short. The irony is sharp. Master George built this fortress for one woman alone. Now, it is New York's ultimate most crowded public wedding stage. His deepest private gesture turned into a massive public spectacle. But maybe that is right. Love requires no shadows. Their public joy perfectly honors the fire my master held inside. These couples know they are stepping into a grander epic. They know Master George and Lady Louise's tragedy. They know this fortress was the ultimate romantic flex. They know he abandoned it the second Lady Louise passed, leaving it forever scarred as a massive, brutal monument to death's victory. Marrying here means accepting the dark context. Love and loss, romance and tragedy, completely inseparable. You and I see the truth. Every wedding here admits time is cruel, death stalks every promise, and love fights on despite the ultimate uncertainty. Brutally honest, the master's fortress never lies. It never pretends love defeats death or guarantees eternal perfect happiness. It proves love matters because time is brutal. Master George had 26 years with her. Never enough time, but their bond was absolutely real. The stone proves it. Modern couples document every second here, standing on the master's steps, celebrating wildly in Lady Louise's gardens. Vows in the Grand Tower. Massive tents across the lawns. Every second captured, broadcasted instantly, and frozen forever in digital memory. The master never imagined this tech, but he understood that legendary moments deserve permanent recording. Beyond weddings, our fortress pulls in romantics, couples returning for anniversaries, young men dropping to one knee constantly. Suitors kneeling, offering rings, while the master's massive walls watch from behind. Our gorgeous, tragic history creates the absolute perfect stage for their most critical relationship moments. But honestly, not everyone comes to the master's gates looking for romance. Families vacationing nearby march up to our gates. Scholars arrive daily, completely obsessed with analyzing the master's incredible wealth and Gilded Age social history. Young architects dissect the master's stonework. Photographers hunt for the perfect shot. Swarms of students march through taking massive educational field trips. These endless crowds prove the master's fortress transcends romance. It is an epic love tale, but also a fierce immigrant triumph and architectural godhood. Gilded Age ambition, a total preservation triumph, an economic engine, an educational resource. All these functions perfectly coexist within my master's walls. The local economy survives on tourists, and the master's castle is the absolute beating heart of it all. Every hotel, tavern, and fleet of boats feeds off the 200,000 souls Master George's legend summons here every single year. I watch the crowds arrive specifically for Hart Island. They bring life and gold to our surrounding towns. The true economic impact? Massive. Millions flow into the local economy yearly. My fellow workers have jobs today simply because our master's castle still stands. Boat captains, guides, the kitchen staff. When the Bridge Authority finally took over the master's estate in 1977, it unleashed a massive wave of wealth for everyone. This booming trade would have utterly shocked Mr. Boldt. He built this sanctuary strictly for private use, never for the public eye. Yet today, it out-earns entire corporations. His private monument to Madame Louise, it became the very lifeblood keeping thousands of our families fed. And the lessons learned here? Invaluable. I watched children wander our halls, wide-eyed, absorbing Gilded Age secrets, grand architecture, and the master's immigrant journey. We make history real for them. They finally see how true royalty lived. They witness the sheer scale of our labor, the unmatched craftsmanship, the absolute genius. Our restoration efforts teach them preservation. They learn exactly why our old walls matter and the blood sweat needed to save them. They gaze at my polished first floor, then the raw, unfinished upper levels. They realize preservation means making brutal choices, and the master's story hits them hard. Young George arrived at 13 with absolutely nothing to his name. A lowly dishwasher, like me, but through raw grit, sharp skill, and Madame Louise's guiding hand, he clawed his way to absolute staggering wealth. Dishwasher to literal king of the castle. It is the ultimate American dream, but dreams always have a dark side. The master conquered the world, yet he couldn't save his beloved. All his millions bought 1900's finest doctors, but it wasn't nearly enough. Gold offered comfort, but no cure. His power couldn't stop the reaper. I sweep these halls, knowing some things simply cannot be bought. It makes our history far heavier than a simple success tale. The master won the world, built an absolute empire, then lost his heart. He touched the stars, then crashed. Total triumph and crushing devastation. My unfinished workplace physically embodies that exact tragedy. Greatness interrupted. Ambition shattered by sudden death. Today's visitors feel that heavy truth, because outside these walls, you are told to just work hard and be happy. But the master's tragedy teaches a darker lesson. You can conquer the earth and still lose everything. Life is brutal. Only love truly matters. Death comes regardless. Build your sanctuary now. But remember, this was a dual reign. The master and Madame Louise forged this entire empire together. She was no mere trophy. She commanded alongside him, designing, managing, innovating. Those massive hotels thrived off her absolute brilliance as much as his. Hart Island was their shared dream, never a forced gift. I hear modern lovers whispering in the gardens, completely awestruck by their balanced power dynamic. They ruled as absolute equals. Back then, that kind of fierce, balanced partnership was practically unheard of. She worked right in the trenches with him, equal weight, shared tactical commands. These very walls reflect both their souls. His raw, towering ambition mixed with her flawless grace. His iron structure, her warm spirit. That kind of perfect alliance changed everything. This isn't some rich man's vanity project. It is a monument to their united front. He laid the stones, but she carved its soul. I see her everywhere. Without her guiding hand, this place would be cold and clumsy. Their bond made it legendary. But honestly, the ruin is its greatest strength. If the master finished it, we'd just be another impressive estate. Pretty, important, but completely standard. Dozens of those polished, flashy Gilded Age manors exist everywhere. I've heard the modern guides talk about them. But our shattered, incomplete state? That makes us unforgettable. The raw rooms, the dropped tools, the dead stop. It hits you right in the chest. Perfection would erase that pain. You walk these halls and you literally feel the master's crushing grief. Listen to me. The brokenness teaches you something real, because out there, plans fail, dreams shatter, tools are dropped. Death sneaks up and interrupts us all in the end. My master's ruined dream mirrors that exact dark reality. It is brutally honest about how life actually works. We start wars we can't finish. We build towards futures we never see. We deeply love people we lose. That raw honesty makes my home devastating, not just pretty. Sure, the stonework is beautiful, but meaning strikes harder. Hart Island stands as a grim, beautiful monument to fierce love, stolen time, and unstoppable death. Its broken state teaches what perfection never could. Look at the other grand manors for proof. The breakers down in Newport? Completely finished, polished for decades, handed over to preservation societies. Absolutely spectacular to look at. Marble House? Stunning. Biltmore down south? Massive, elaborate, practically a kingdom of its own. They are all magnificent, sure, but honestly, they are just cold museum displays of hoarded gold. Impressive and historic, yes, but totally hollow inside. You walk their halls, stare at the ceiling, and feel absolutely nothing for the lords who built them. But my master's island? It's different. You feel George and Louise in the air. You recognize their desperate love and the crushing, suffocating weight of their tragedy. That raw, emotional bleed makes this place unforgettable. Other mansions might have better roofs, but they lack this devastating soul. And now, the weddings bring it all full circle. The master laid these stones for one singular romance, a towering gift to honor his bride. Today, hundreds of couples swear their vows here every year. One shattered marriage hosting thousands. A romance stolen by death, now protecting new beginnings. You and I know the master didn't get his happy ending, but his legacy survives. Lady Louise passed too young. Master George never recovered. We abandoned the castle, but love endures. Today, I watch new couples commit to each other. New bonds form. Life marches forward despite my master's loss. Our castle proudly hosts this continuation. It stands as a memorial to our lost masters, yet celebrates new beginnings, a monument to yesteryear, welcoming tomorrow. Master George built it, honoring the beautiful bond he shared with Lady Louise. But today it looks forward, hosting the joy of others. This dual purpose, honoring my master's past while making room for tomorrow, gives our grand castle its true power. These halls are not frozen in time, nor just a quiet memorial. It is a living estate where our history breathes alongside the present. Master George and Madam's story guides the halls without overshadowing modern guests. The restoration respects this beautifully. The caretakers didn't create a stuffy museum piece. Our castle isn't just roped off and untouchable. They breathed life back into these functional spaces. You and I can walk these rooms, watch weddings in our gardens, or dine at the Ulster Tower. You experience a living estate, not some forgotten tomb. This actually honors my master's intentions better than locking it away. They never wanted a museum. They desired a vibrant, active home, echoing with real life. Seeing millions of guests enjoy our halls instead of just one family doesn't ruin Master George's dream. Honestly, it magnificently extends it. The love my master shared provides the foundation for others. Hart Island now serves as a monument, a venue, a thriving attraction, and a beautiful wedding destination simultaneously. These roles do not clash. They perfectly align. Every guest reinforces the estate, funding our preservation. Careful preservation creates a stunning venue. Weddings here prove love's eternal continuation. That continuing joy honors the very romance that laid these stones. Master George simply wanted to give Madame Louise permanent, physical proof of a love outlasting death. My master succeeded far beyond his wildest dreams. Our castle proudly stands. Its romance touches strangers who never even met George or Louise. This grand monument works not despite being unfinished, but exactly because of it. That tragic interruption carved a deeper meaning than perfection ever could. A monument to love. That is what my master built. That is what survives today. Not merely stone and wood, but a profound, enduring idea. Hart Island proves that true love is worth building castles for. Yes, devastating loss is inevitable, but it cannot erase shared joy. Incompleteness is honest. Grief lingers, yet beauty survives. Master George's tribute became a shrine to love itself. Universal, undeniably powerful, and worth celebrating despite life's cruel uncertainties. It transformed from our private family haven to a universal beacon. One couple's tragic story became everyone's experience. That alone makes our Hart Island more than another wealthy Gilded Age mansion. It remains a sacred space where love is remembered, fiercely honored, and beautifully continued. Here Master George built for his Louise. Yet millions now stand in these halls, feeling deep reflections of their own loves, losses, and fragile hopes. The fortress he meant for one beloved woman now serves the world. That is its true power. That is his surviving, wonderfully unfinished masterpiece. Stand with me in a third-floor room of our castle today. Empty spaces, bare walls marked by decades of abandonment, exposed brick waiting for plaster that never came. Window frames sit empty or hold newer restoration glass. The floors remain solid yet agonizingly unfinished. The room stands simultaneously complete and incomplete. Structurally sound, aesthetically raw, this starkness is completely intentional. The caretakers could easily finish my master's room using their modern money and plans. Yet they choose not to. This raw state serves a profound purpose. In this quiet emptiness, you truly feel the weight of stopping all construction. We servants and workers just walked away. Projects died mid-task. Master's heart-wrenching telegram from January 1904 left permanent scars, visible even today. These walls show time frozen, our labor halted, grand dreams left hanging. Now, let us walk downstairs to the polished first floor. A completely different world down here. Elegant rooms and fine furniture, restored exactly how my master envisioned them for 1905. Breathtaking, functional, and whole. This jarring contrast is exactly the point. The first floor shows his dream. The upper floors show his tragedy. Together, they tell our master's full story. Separated, they lose their power. The castle's true magic emerges directly from this heartbreaking contrast. Which raises a heavy question. Would finishing our castle today be right or wrong? Some argue for it. Master George wanted perfection, and his blueprints survived. Modern craftsmen could perfectly build those remaining rooms. Fully completed, the estate would look undeniably majestic. Guests could see the exact vision my master held. But the reasons against it are stronger. Master George stopped our work intentionally. Lady Louise died, and finishing her gift without her felt deeply wrong. Building it now disrespects his grief. That emptiness is our castle's strongest feature, teaching volumes through sheer absence. Plastering over that pain would erase the lesson, turning this unique monument to interrupted love into just another wealthy, finished mansion. The new caretakers chose wisely. Restore enough to show my master's glorious intent. Leave enough bare to honor his devastating loss. A perfect balance. They honor Master George's vision and his sorrow perfectly. You and I know life itself is just an unfinished masterpiece. We servants planned, built, and dreamed. Then fate interrupted us. Death, illness, bad luck. No one finishes everything. Most lives fade out, leaving unfulfilled dreams and abandoned work. Our stone walls normalize that harsh reality. They proudly show that an incomplete dream doesn't equal failure. Master Boldt was immensely successful. A humble immigrant dishwasher who became a powerful hotelier, truly capturing the American dream. Yet his greatest masterpiece stayed broken. Success and tragic incompletion live together in him. That honesty is rare today, where society only praises polished, finished victories. People usually hide abandoned failures, but our grand fortress refuses to lie, displaying its painful incompleteness proudly. It declares that unfinished love still deeply matters. My master's other legacies, like the great Waldorf-Astoria, operated successfully for decades. But this is eternal. My master's Bellevue Stratford conquered Philadelphia for most of the 20th century. Both his grand hotels achieved their tactical goals, serving their purpose flawlessly. But you and I don't remember Mr. Boldt for his business victories. We remember his unfinished castle. That broken monument speaks louder than any completed hotel ever could. His abandoned masterpiece echoes far beyond those successful businesses. Bitter irony, really. My master's professional conquests, the massive projects he actually finished, became mere footnotes. His one great personal retreat, the fortress he abandoned, cemented his legacy. Not because defeat outweighs victory, no, it is because this specific, shattered dream exposes a raw truth about love, crushing loss, and our human limits. The castle exposed his true character. After Madame Louise passed, he could have finished it. He had unlimited funds, resources, and us workers standing by. Finishing the job would have taken just 6 more months. The gold was already spent. $2.5 million gone, the heavy lifting finished. Pushing through would have cost pennies and built a priceless estate. He refused. He walked away from millions in sunk costs. He left a 90% completed fortress to rot. That tactical retreat showed how deep his grief ran. A palace without Madame Louise meant absolutely nothing. Finishing it felt like outright treason. Marching forward when his heart stopped, completing a prize meant for 2. Outsiders have questioned my master's choice for over a century. Scholars still argue if Mr. Boldt acted from pure heartbreak or cold tactics, honoring his wife or just stopping the financial bleeding. A romantic sacrifice or pure business? Honestly, probably both. Strategy and sorrow can easily mix. Madame Louise's death completely destroyed him. I saw it firsthand. But he remained a brilliant tactician who knew when to cut losses. A fortress without a queen held no strategic value. His broken heart and financial logic perfectly aligned. Only the final outcome matters. That empty, decaying fortress became far more powerful than any completed palace ever could. My master's command to halt, whatever his real strategy was, forged something legendary, completely by accident. He only ever wanted a private sanctuary for his wife. Instead, his ruins became a massive public monument to love, crushing loss, and inevitable death. After 1904, the master never spoke of it, never justified his retreat, and never stepped foot on that island again. His absolute silence is legendary now. His refusal to speak hits just as hard as the stone walls themselves. That silence gives the ruins a voice. Empty chambers, dropped hammers, tactical garden blueprints permanently left unfinished. The massive yacht house waiting for fleets that never arrived. The giant generators built to power a beautiful life that simply vanished. Every silent stone screams about broken campaigns and shattered dreams. My master finally fell on December 5, 1916, 12 years after his wife, heart giving out at 65. For a dozen years, he boycotted Hart Island, kept building his empire, kept spending summers nearby at Wellesley Farms, and kept funding his charities. But he absolutely refused to step onto the island with his ruined fortress. Such iron discipline. We could literally see the place from Wellesley. He stared right at it across the water. Every single summer, that jagged skyline sat there, a brutal reminder of his greatest tactical failure and missing queen. He never surrendered to nostalgia, curiosity, or the basic human need for closure. He held the line. Was that a tactical retreat or just running away? Honoring her memory or torturing his own soul? Marching ahead or entirely trapped? Probably a chaotic mix. Grief destroys all strategy. 12 long years is an eternity to hold a defensive line, but Mr. Boldt held it until his final breath. Laying him to rest beside Madame at Woodlawn Cemetery finished the campaign. Built her a fortress, ordered a full retreat when she fell, held his ground, then joined her. His true monuments are that ruined island base and that quiet shared grave down in the Bronx. Both declare his absolute devotion and crushing defeat. Today, that fortress still stands because strangers saw a strategic value my master completely missed. He believed the structure was worthless without his queen. He miscalculated. It gained legendary status exactly because she vanished. A broken wall teaches lessons a perfect one hides. It took 73 years to realize. From 1904 to 1977, the fortress slowly decayed. Then, new allies intervened. Those bridge authority troops never served my master or madam, but they knew this stronghold mattered. They secured the perimeter, not for him, but for the world. Not to finish his tactical plan, but to freeze his massive retreat in time. This rescue operation has lasted 47 years now, fighting back the decay. We've guarded the ruins longer than we abandoned them. The extraction was a total success. The stronghold stands. And my master's legend lives on. Over 4 million civilians have breached Hart Island since 1978. 4 million souls marching right through Mr. Boldt's permanently shattered, beautiful dream. 4 million people learning harsh truths about love, crushing loss, and death just by staring at stone. They finish his fortress in their own minds. Every scout seeing the ghost of what should have happened. He never planned for this. Built for one woman, his fortress now commands millions. His classified gift became a global beacon. The quietest gesture turned into a massive lesson. The stronghold he called useless without her suddenly meant everything to everyone else. His broken masterpiece proves an aborted mission doesn't destroy value. A sudden tactical halt creates profound meaning. Missing soldiers speak just as loudly as the ones standing there. The campaigns we abandon hit just as hard as the victories. Love cut down by death? It still counts. Pure agony, carved right into granite, can instruct future generations. Let's look at Hart Island today. A stronghold for love, sure, but mostly a brutal reminder of death. Nothing survives the final siege. Fleeting moments are the ones that hit hardest. The walls won't hold forever. Eventually, time crushes every stone. But right now, the perimeter holds. It teaches. It fights on. George Boldt, a 13-year-old dishwasher turned master commander, only wanted to forge an immortal shield for his wife. He won a victory he never saw coming. His fortress stands, not as a sealed, flawless bunker, but as a shattered, massive public legacy. His fortress works not despite being broken, but purely because of it. I watched the master's masterpiece stop dead. Honestly, it's more powerful incomplete. It speaks through sheer silence, honoring his lady not by hiding grief, but by making his heartbreak visible. That is exactly what Mr. Boldt accidentally built. It is what survives today. The absolute truth: our master's great castle will forever stand incomplete. I still walk these halls, some perfectly finished, others totally bare. Restored gardens sit right beside wild abandoned ones. His monument deliberately frozen in that awful, interrupted moment. That is not failure. It is raw honesty. Love suddenly interrupted. Work abandoned. The madam's life cut tragically short. Every ounce of pain, locked in stone. It teaches what a finished roof would hide. His unfinished masterpiece remains our greatest reminder. Listen to me. You and I know how it goes. We build, we love, then time violently stops us. Mr. Boldt built his wife a castle. She died before we finished it. He ordered us to drop our tools immediately. It rotted for decades until strangers rescued his dream. Now, his private gift to her serves the entire world. A grand gift, brutally interrupted by death, but it keeps giving anyway. That is our story. That is Hart Island's true lesson. Honestly, his unfinished walls matter more than 1,000 completed mansions. The missing pieces are the whole point. The sudden halt holds the meaning. Absence became presence. True devotion made visible through heavy loss. That is what Mr. Boldt built. Look outside today. Boats constantly arrive, carrying curious visitors to our island. Crowds wander the halls I once swept, exploring rooms both lavish and totally bare. They stand in Madame Louise's gardens and photograph the massive towers the master raised. They hear our tales of wild ambition, love, and crippling grief. Then they head back to the mainland to resume their lives. But something shifts. Because they have finally seen a love letter entirely honest about death. They have walked through a fortress that proudly admits it is broken. They felt a place honoring pure grief without letting it win. That is this castle's real magic. Not through us servants explaining it, but through pure, heavy presence, through carved stone and hollow absence, finished luxury sitting right beside empty framing. It is raw, interrupted beauty, but undeniably stunning. The master started as a humble dishwasher, built an empire, raised a castle, lost his queen, and died broken. Sounds like a terrible tragedy, right? But looking at it that way misses the entire point. Mr. Boldt had 26 glorious years with Madame Louise. They forged an unstoppable empire and created absolute beauty together. Their bond was so intense that when she passed, continuing a project meant for her became completely impossible. That is no tragedy. That is true love, proving itself real through bottomless, crushing grief. This stone stands as proof, but not that love conquers everything, because it simply doesn't. Madame died, the master wept, The walls remained forever bare. His devotion did not block death or erase the pain, but it mattered enough to pour fortunes into massive monuments and to instantly abandon them when his beloved lady was truly gone. And let me tell you, that matters. While people today treat romance casually, our master's fortress screams the exact opposite. Real devotion is actually worth building literal castles for. It matters so much that when the heart stops, leaving the grandest work completely unfinished is the only sane response. It meant way more than just finishing a job or making financial sense. Now, the private sanctuary the master built for one single woman serves millions of strangers. Every new couple marrying on these grounds continues the master's grand tradition, building their own fierce, temporary monuments to romance. Every single visitor wandering Madame's gardens or these hollow halls suddenly understands something heavy about death and fierce devotion. See it from the river, and you realize some emotions outlive us all. Unlike those other flashy Gilded Age ego projects, this was different. This was just a deeply intimate, personal gift. Built strictly to please his lady, not society. That difference is huge. Ego trips are everywhere, but true love monuments, extremely rare. Those other famous mansions just show off what cold money buys. But Mr. Boldt's walls? They reveal exactly what pure love inspires. It is not about which estate is bigger, it is all about the motive. The master never built this just to fiercely compete or show off. Built to give Madame Louise something beautiful, a totally different meaning. The unfinished state teaches one final lesson: pure impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. Death breaks marriages. Buildings decay. Huge empires crumble. Everything is painfully temporary. But temporary does not mean meaningless. The master and Madame's 26 years together completely shaped the future. 2 children, a legendary hotel empire, and this massive, jagged castle that now teaches millions about devotion, even completely unfinished. Their temporary time mattered. Being painfully incomplete mattered. Being interrupted mattered. This stone proves it. From a scrubbing dishwasher to a master builder, from poor immigrant to absolute millionaire, the master went from nobody to a legend, drawing massive crowds annually. His life was genuinely extraordinary. But his endless wealth is not what makes the story survive. It is his devotion and his brutal willingness to drop everything when his light went out. The massive fortress Mr. Boldt raised for his lady, left hollow the day she died, later rescued by strangers, carefully restored, and now admired by millions. It still stands tall today. Not the finished palace the master originally planned, but something deeper, a raw monument to intense partnership, proving that broken, unfinished things can be absolutely perfect precisely because they are incomplete. Look at Hart Island, a towering stone castle resting on heart-shaped ground, furiously built by a man who started with zero, all for a woman who meant absolutely everything. Abandoned the second she passed, then rescued decades later, it now teaches lessons my master never could have imagined. Their earthly romance suddenly ended on January 7, 1904. But the devotion itself? It echoes through these halls, in Madame's gardens, inside the empty framing, striking millions of visitors who suddenly understand their own quiet loves, painful losses, and inescapable mortality. The master stopped all work. But construction never truly ends. Every single visitor finishes this fortress inside their own imagination. Every modern wedding here stacks brand new romance onto our master's ancient foundation. Everyone grasping this tragedy adds profound meaning to his heavy stone. The palace Mr. Boldt built for his lady now belongs to everyone. That is no betrayal. It is a fulfillment way beyond his wildest dreams. He desperately wanted to hand her eternity. He did, just not how he planned. Look with me across the St. Lawrence River from our island, watching the water rushing endlessly past. That deep river flowed long before the master and Madame met. It flows today, And it will keep rushing long after this incredible castle finally crumbles into dust that nobody rescues. But today, in this very moment, our master's castle still stands. The monument worked. I watched Master George build this for Lady Louise. Later, the world saved it. Both actions were entirely right. That fierce romance and humanity's shared love, they both matter. I saw a humble dishwasher become a grand castle builder. They built massive empires together. Then, sudden tragedy shattered absolutely everything. We left it behind, which somehow gave it meaning. You outsiders saving it honored their broken dream. All of it truly teaches us. Hart Island stands as heavy proof. Love cannot stop death, but trust me, it loudly insists that love is still reason enough to build grand castles anyway. An unfinished, completely broken, yet beautifully honest monument. That is what my master built. It survived, and that matters.